Out there, rotoscouts baseball fans. Happy trade deadline day, everybody. Think it's going to be a fun one. We are starting for a 14-game slate, which naturally, trade deadline day, why not have 14 games on deck for tonight? It's got to be a great combination for that. Starting up at 4 o'clock with the hopes of riding it directly up to the 6 p.m. trade deadline. Then I'm punching out to head up to the Yankees game. So not playing the full 150 lineups, so I don't have to worry about building lineups later on. We can go right up to the deadline. Hopefully there'll be a lot of fun stuff to talk about in the chat. Hopefully there'll be a lot of interesting deals. We've already had a couple big ones. Verlander going back to the Astros is a major piece. I think we called that on the show or in the article the other day. Not necessarily called it, but said like, hey, that's rumored and it seems pretty damn likely. It makes a lot of sense that he'd be going back there. Probably never should have left Houston. But nice big trade for the Mets. They also sent Mark Canha out of town last night. Obviously they had the big Max Scherzer deal a couple days ago. So the Metsies are selling off. Looks like the Phillies acquired Michael Lorenzen from the Tigers just a little while ago. What else happened today? We had a couple other ones today. Candelario went to the Cubbies last night. Should be in the lineup for the Cubs today. All kinds of stuff. What else is going on? Bader and IKF, we were talking about them possibly being on the move for the Yankees, but it looks like they're in the lineup tonight. So that'll be interesting to see if the Yanks make any last-minute changes. Or actually... is Bader in the lineup? No, Bader's not in the lineup today, so maybe Bader's on the move. IKF is in the lineup today, so maybe IKF sticks around. Kind of would rather have that the other way around, but I don't really care that much about Bader. All kinds of rumors flying around. Had a weird slate to deal with last night. Anybody enjoy that slate last night? Did anybody do well? I didn't. I didn't have a great day yesterday, but we had that weird one with the... there's the crazy rain delay, 2.5 hour rain delay, 11 p.m. plus start time in the East for that Rockies game to sweat out. Only went to a 4-3 game. There were actually a good handful of strikeouts on both sides in that one. That was a strange slate, but didn't hit my lineups correctly. I had a little bit of Atlanta. They didn't connect for a change finally. Forget what else went pop. Oh, Stroman, Marcus Stroman. I think my biggest pitching miss of the entire year in Marcus Stroman going negative. I almost had a full lineup go negative last night. It ended up scoring, I think, like 9 points on FanDuel. It was Stroman at a -3 and I think like a Diamondbacks and somebody stack. And it was just zeros all the way down into like the 7th inning for the hitters. And I was like, man, this might end up as a -3 lineup overall. It's important to have the full spectrum of results. Looks like we've got a good group in the chat. The one and only, your old pal and mine, Eric McPherson in the chat. He was the first one here hanging out today. Not sure if he's still hanging around. Hopefully he's here for a little bit for the show. Hang out to chat. Hopefully we don't get him in any trouble. I didn't invite him. I'm not paying him. He's not here in an official capacity. He's just here hanging out. So no running back to those other folks and ratting out poor Emac for hanging out with us. Calvin Dunn's in the chat. Larry C's in the chat. Lone Wolf, Phil Still, Trey's here. Steven Leibowitz is here. Jake's here. Got the whole crew, all the regulars so far. Well, some of the early regulars anyway. We got a lot that arrived through the show. We got a lot to talk about. I'm going to try my best to keep an eye on the reports for the trade deadline. I'm going to try my best to keep an eye on the chat as we go. A little bit better than yesterday. I'm just going to kind of try and leave this window open. Look at my stats on the video screen here that's got the chat next to it rather than jumping over to the Excel sheet, so it might take a minute to change games and everything. There's Poe Degen Stoner. I was wondering when you were going to get here. Would you get tied up smoking? It's tough keeping time. I get it. You lose track of time. All of a sudden it's 4:05, not 4 o'clock. You're still sitting in the kitchen twiddling your thumbs, not knowing what's going on, jamming Cheetos into your face. I understand how that works. Hit that like button like Steven Leibowitz said. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. A lot to talk about today. Hopefully it's a good one. Jake Swales asked my thoughts on Savali to the Rays. It's a good pickup. I think that was an interesting pickup. It's a higher price than I would have thought they would have to pay to acquire Aaron Savali, but I think he's a talented pitcher. It's a Rays kind of a trade. like acquiring an undervalued asset on the market. Like, I don't think there was a very hot market for Savali. They're always willing to send out high-end prospects. They kind of view prospects like I do, as like prospects are commodities. There's always another prospect coming down the pipe. There's always another high-end outfield prospect, high-end first base prospect, whatever it is. So if you can swap some prospects to get an asset like a capable pitcher, like they just need a good 3 and change runs, 7 innings type of a starter. They don't really care about the strikeout upside that he comes with or without. And we've looked at him a bunch of times for DFS purposes. He's a very good, capable starter. Has been a mid-20s strikeout guy in years past. Was low 20s this year, but capable. I think it's a good acquisition for them. And like with the depth and flexibility in that lineup, like they don't really care about losing a pretty good first base prospect or a very good first base prospect. So I like the acquisition for them. I think it makes them more competitive. Hopefully my Yankees handle their business against them tonight. That's actually first game on deck. Oh, I was putting some lineups in. I forgot. Let me just finish with whatever lineups have dropped. The Rays lineup is in. That's in our first game here, so that's handy. Let me grab that. So we'll drop these in as we talk. Shout out any trades that you guys spot in the chat. And like I said, I'm going to try and keep an eye on it. I might rely on you guys a little bit more to shout out the trades while I'm going through some of the games and stuff. I'm not the best at also keeping an eye on Twitter. There's only so many eyes and many, many things to keep track of and talk about while we do this. So feel free to shout them out in the chat and talk over one another and report the same trade 14 times. That's always fun. The Phillies lineup is the last one. Phillies are not on this slate, so that one doesn't matter. I wish it would only pop up the ones that you're sorted to on Labs, but that's asking way too much. It would be nice if they could just get the weather reporting right. All right, let's get into this one. Jump over here. Rays and the Yanks. Jake Swale says he was thinking Erod and didn't even know Savali was on the market, but he likes it. Yeah, I think it's. I think Erod would also have been an interesting acquisition and kind of a Rays style acquisition. I wouldn't entirely put it past them to not, to also go out and get him. It's not like they're short on assets to flip for him. So depends. I would imagine that Erod's going to be on the move in the next hour and 52 minutes. I can't imagine they hang on to him. Chase says Labs has gotten lazier and lazier over time. I swear they get lazier by the day. Yeah, I mean, they're a great resource. Like so much of the industry relies on their just quick lineups and things like that. But yeah, things like the weather. Emac and I have been laughing at the weather all season long because like yesterday's Colorado game where Roth was like, "Oh my God, it's gonna flood so bad the ballpark might wash away. Like this is danger. The Rockies might be underwater, and it means the actual mountains." And Labs was like, "Nope, green." 11% chance of rain. It was like, wait a minute, what? Just total discrepancies like that. So totally bizarre. What else we got going on? That's about it going on in the chat. So let's dive into this one. We'll talk Yanks. We'll talk Rays. As I said, shout out any trades that happen while I'm jabbering away about this stuff. I think it's a good pitching matchup here. The price on Carlos Rodon is spectacular on FanDuel at 7,900. You can see both these pitchers project out pretty well. It might actually pay to, let me real quick, as an entry point for the entire slate and for this, let's take a look at this absurdly deep pitching board. All right, so we've got Eflin and Rodon side by side here at 36 and 34 by FanDuel scoring. But you can come down this far and still be at 30 points. You can come down this far and still be at 26 points. So this is a deep pitching slate. Any of these guys. I mean, these guys are obviously the much more likely group. I'll lump Justin Steele into that. You could even throw Pablo and Freddie into that. Like, this top end is high priced and up top for a reason, but all of these guys are on the board for value. There's a lot of pitching options today. And then it all just dies on the vine around all of these guys who are terrible, pitching in Coors Field, completely washed up, totally inept on the mound overall, or pitching against the Atlanta Braves while still being a pretty good pitcher if you're Patrick Sandoval. So it's an interesting pitching board. There's obviously a very, very high peak with Strider, with Gallen both projecting really well. Lance Lynn projects great against the Athletics. Fromber projects really well against the Guardians. There's a ton of different directions to go. So this, for me, is a slate that's going to dictate a pretty big spread at pitcher. But I think Carlos Rodon is really, really interesting, given that he projects into that group for such a lower price tag than anybody else in that group on FanDuel. A pretty decent price at $9K on DraftKings, considering his strikeout upside when he's going right. He's made 4 starts. He's thrown 20 and a third. He hasn't been overly good at all. 6.12 xFIP, a 5.75 ERA, 16.7% strikeouts, 13.3% walk rate so far. But we know that Carlos Rodon, when he's going right, is a 30+% strikeout pitcher. Past two seasons, 33.4 and 34.6% strikeouts, 2.88 ERA, and a 2.91 xFIP in 33 starts last year. He is a premium option. So for tournament play, on a deep slate, I think it makes sense to grab some shares of him as a way to get to some cheap bats, or some expensive bats rather, maybe in very expensive like Dodgers or somebody like that going up against Ken Waldichuk with a discounted second stack and a Carlos Rodon. You can make the Dodgers premium bats work together. Same story with like the Braves against a better pitcher. Same story with probably the top end of the Padres. So Rodon's a premium value option here. On the other side, Eflin's just pretty good. He's had a few bumps in the road, but overall 25.2% strikeout rate, 11% swing, 30.3% CSW, only a 3.7% walk rate is terrific, a 1.02 whip. There is a little bit of power concern as usual going up against the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. You've got Judge sitting here at a massive 16.03, but you don't have Giancarlo Stanton in the lineup today, so that takes away a major power bat from the Yankees, obviously. Greatly diminishes the lineup. You get Jake Bauers in the leadoff spot for 23-26 across sites. 9 homers for him, hit another one last night. A decent lefty power bat, target the right field seats in Yankee Stadium. Lefties are always in play. Power hitting lefties are always in play in Yankee Stadium. So Bauers is loosely in play. He's very, very cheap on both sides. He lost his first base eligibility on DK, just an outfielder over there. First base and outfield on FanDuel has a little bit of value. Judge is obviously an extreme option. 20 home runs, 385 ISO, and just 226 plate appearances. He's very, very expensive, but everybody else in the lineup is cheap, so it just helps average him down. Getting Glaber, getting Rizzo at 28 apiece plus Bauers. So the average price with Judge included on FanDuel is $3,100 for those 4 hitters. I think we can afford that. On DK, let's throw, say, DJ LeMahieu into the mix for $31. The average becomes $4,100 with Judge's 64 in there. I think we can afford that too. If you wanted to include Billy McKinney instead of DJ LeMahieu, which might be the better option, grab another lefty with a little bit of power for $2,200, even cheaper. That makes that stack of Bauers, Judge, Torres, Rizzo, and McKinney a $3,900 investment on DK. I actually like that kind of a lot if you're going to Yankee stacks. I just don't think Yankee stacks are all that great here. Kind of a diminished version of the lineup, kind of just an underperforming, lousy lineup. I'm going to the game, so that means they're not going to score runs. They're not going to hit any home runs. They're not going to do anything interesting, and they'll probably lose the ball game. With Carlos Rodon getting blown up in the one lineup that I'm playing today. He is my value pitcher, though, in that lineup. I revealed basically half of it. I just didn't tell you guys which ones the value hitters in that lineup were. Rays against Rodon, I think, is a definitely playable spot. As featured, he's been struggling a little bit. He's been kind of bumping along. He could come out and dominate in this spot, but there's a very good chance that they can get to him. They've been great for power. They've been great for stolen bases. They had a lousy July, but overall, they're very cheap, or at least like affordable average pricing. They're not expensive for the crazy output that they had early in the season. So I think you could just combine any shares of the top end of the Rays anyway, like 1 through 5. I think the upside for Rodon is supported a little bit by having Manny Margot in the lineup, Christian Bethancourt, Vidal Brujan. Jose Siri has been very, very good this year, 20 home runs on the season, but he's got a 35.7% strikeout rate to go with that. So that kind of helps Rodon with one of the better overall hitters in the lineup. But there's obviously major right-handed power in Jose Siri. Isaac Paredes has 21 homers in 358 plate appearances. Randy Rosarena, 17 homers in 438. Harold Ramirez is an excellent righty bat against lefties for like line drive power. He hit 9 early home runs this season and then kind of reverted back to being the normal Harold Ramirez. But he's still a great option hitting third for 3,200 if you're attacking Carlos Rodon here. Wander Franco's a star, 13 home runs, 29 stolen bases, down to a 117 WRC+, 267, 332, 446. He's hit a couple bumps. I thought I saw something pop up for the updates. I've also got the phone here, trying to keep track of any updates that come through. Franco and John D. Diaz at the top of the lineup for 4,500, 3,300. A guy creating runs 58% better than average over 391 plate appearances this year. There's just no reason to leave the Rays off entirely. So I think they're a very playable stack. Looking at my stacks board, they rank 11th overall by projections, 13th for home runs, but they land 8th for FanDuel value, 6th for DK value. That's everything on that stacks board is with this morning's lineup, so there might be minor changes, but I'm not really sweating any minor changes there. They're a very good value-based mid-range team with some upside against Rodon here. So it's a definite yes for Rodon shares, even at the higher DK price. Enthusiastic about him on FanDuel. Even with the bumps in the road, I'll just take my shots in tournaments. He is the one shot I'm taking at pitcher in the one tournament I'm playing, the one lineup I'm playing. Eflin is a definite yes across a full pool of lineups. I would want to have a decent share of him, maybe even get ahead of the field, depending on. I would imagine he's pretty low owned. He's fairly expensive on both sides. So that supports the idea of being low owned. 10-3, 10-2. That's a tax to pay for Zach Eflin, especially with some up and down performances of late. So I think you can go to Yanks. I think you can go to Rays. Both lineups in the mid range, but losing Stanton definitely dings the Yankees. I do like Bowers and McKinney in there as cheapo lefty power bats though, particularly on DK. Joker's here. He says hello. Why don't you go lay down, pal? We got a lot to talk about today, and we're not talking to you. Hit the like button for Joker, waving his tail back there. He's enthusiastic about the trade deadline. The Brewers and the Nats. Let's see if we got the Brewers lineup real quick. Doesn't look like we did. We got a few other ones in. We'll grab those when the time comes. Buddy, come on. Go lie down. Go lay down. I know you're happy. You're a good boy. Go lie down. We'll do something fun later. Probably not because I'm going to the game. Poor guy. Bird Nerds in the chat says, what's up, Joker? Mamba says, what's up, Joker? Jake says, what's up to him? Shannon Lambert's in the chat. What's going on, everybody? So the Brewers and the Nats. Freddie Peralta. I wrote about this game so long ago, I forgot he was pitching today. Decent projection in that mid-tier kind of a range. 9,400, 10-3, 28.3% strikeout rate on the season, a 4.46 xFIP, 4.46 ERA, but a better 3.90 xFIP. He's allowing an odd amount of power this season, 9.2% barrels, 40.3% hard hits, 3.89% home runs. Brewers are to acquire Andrew Chafin from the D-backs. Good pickup for them. Reliever. So Freddie's got the strikeouts that he's had in the past, but he's giving up an odd amount of power. In years past, he's been much, much better for premium contact, avoiding long balls, avoiding power. 1.89% home runs last year on 31.3% hard hits. The year before, 2.41 on 31.1% hard hits. This year, that's up to 40.3% hard hits, 9.2% barrels. So barrels have gone from 3.5 last year in a moderate sample last year, but 6.6% the year before in 144 innings, all the way up to 9.2 this year, with hard hits way up and home runs jumping all the way up to 3.89%. So he's definitely had his issues, but just on the virtue of a pretty good matchup here against the Nats, I think Freddie's perfectly playable. I believe in this projection. I think he's totally fine here. Josiah Gray on the other side, probably a good option for value darts on the DK slate. I do think that the Brewers are a very playable stack. They rank 4th by projections, 3rd by FanDuel value, 5th by DK value, and 3rd by home run rate. There's a lot of home run data from the past 2 years that's pushing home run upside up against Josie Gray here, but he's gotten that under control so far this season. 2.92% home run rate on the season, down to 7.4% barrels, 35.7% hard hits. He's dropped in strikeouts down to 19.9%. He walks too many at 10.5, 3.27 ERA, but a 4.96 xFIP. He's definitely got his warts, but that's all cooked into a $6,500 price. So I do think Josiah Gray's on the board for value play, but I want to play some Brewers back against him because I do believe that power upside still exists on the right day, and he's not really breezing through lineups anyway. He's giving up some runs. He's giving up too many opportunities. The Brewers have enough playable bats and plenty of playable bats at value pricing with multi-position eligibility, with guys who slot in interesting combinations. So I think the Brewers are very much in play here as well. Christian Yelich off the top of the lineup, 5,600, 3,600. He's a star. He's an everyday player. You can get him in one-off situations if you want him. 290, 374, 481, 22 steals, 16 homers, 32% better than average creating runs. William Contreras, I talked about really liking catchers that hit high up in the lineup because they're typically, obviously just good hitters for their position, and they get extra plate appearances. So it's just advantageous to have a catcher who hits first or second in the lineup, even down to 4th, versus a catcher who hits 7th, 8th, 9th. You just get an extra half a plate appearance or so of expectation to work with. So William Contreras is an interesting play. He's also got a decent stick, decent power. Carlos Santana, both sides of the plate, very cheap at 3,800 on DK. Not as cheap at FanDuel, 3,300 on FanDuel. First baseman, 13 home runs on the season, moderate power, fairly unreliable overall, and only a 5.9% barrel rate, 36.5% hard hits. It's not a great investment at the relative price on FanDuel, but he's definitely playable when you stack Brewers because everybody else around him is cheap. Sal Frelick's been good as a rookie, 3,900, 33,000, very affordable. 36 plate appearances, but 32% better than average creating runs, a homer on the board already. Willie Adames, power for days. Andrew Monasterio, above average WRC plus in 127 plate appearances. Abraham Toro is good for some cheap pop late in the lineup, 2,800, 2,600, multi-position eligible. And then Bryce Turang is meh, but Joey Wiemer hit his 13th home run last night, has 11 steals. Just kind of an athletic guy who, can produce some counting stats from time to time. Very irregular counting stats, but he's very, very cheap and he's always low owned. So it's different than getting like the irregular counting stats from like a more expensive Volpe or somebody like that people do go to. Joey Wiemer is typically very underowned or very unowned. The under versus appropriate ownership list is debatable for a guy with an 84 WRC plus. So he's not great. He's certainly not a star, but he's playable. The Nats against Freddie Peralta, if you're going there, you're really focused on like these top 3 hitters and Keibert Ruiz, and then it's really, really questionable the rest of the way. I don't really see much need to play the Nats on a slate with 28 options. Like, there's just so many better spots. It's a diminished version of the lineup with no Emerson Laladio in the lineup now. Dom Smith's hitting cleanup. He's been god-awful this season. He's got a 4.9% barrel rate, a 28.6% hard hit rate, 5 home runs, and a .081 ISO for the season. So let's hit him cleanup. That makes sense. Just frustrating. Joey Meneses has had a good hit tool at 283, but not getting on base enough, not really hitting for much power with a 125 ISO, 8 homers, 41.5% hard hits is okay. It was better for hard hits, better for a little bit of power in a short sample last year. Lane Thomas still in the lineup. It doesn't seem like they're going to get a good offer for him, so he's still here. Terrible July for him. We looked at it yesterday, but overall, consistent numbers and their best player overall, but a really weak July. CJ Abrams, since going to the leadoff spot, has been very good. So it's really these 3 guys, plus the catcher. Catcher's got some power. 3,700, 2,400 is a good price. He's got 11 homers on the season. He's got a better expected slugging than an actual slugging. So there's upside for Keibert Ruiz. And then everybody, Dom Smith included, Luis Garcia, Corey Dickerson, Jake Alou, and Alex Call, just mix and match options. Not a lot of quality in that Nationals lineup. Especially not against, like, if you get Freddie, even doesn't have to be a good day for Freddie. Just an okay day from Freddie Peralta can kind of take this lineup out of contention. So that one was definite yes for some Brewers value stacks. They're showing good power. I think it's a good spot against Josiah Gray. But some shares of value darts, particularly on DK as an SP2 at 6,500, he's in play there. 8,900 is pushing it, by the way, on the FanDuel slate. I know he projects all right, but there's a lot of other pitchers for the price. So more on the Brewer side on the FanDuel slate. Darts for Josie Gray value on DK. Definite value for some Freddie Peralta. 9,400, 10.3 is probably the right price for him, even with the bumps against this Nats lineup. All right, Tigers and the Pirates. Let's see if we got the Pirates lineup in. Doesn't look like it quite yet. They might be looking to make some more deals. They sent G-Man Choi out of town, so he's not going to be in the lineup. So I've probably got an update to this projected lineup. Yeah, let me go with the more current projected lineup because G-Man's not on the team anymore, so it's unlikely that he's going to be hitting cleanup. So the new version of I just dropped it into the confirm. Let me not confuse actually, I'm not making lineups later, so who cares? Don't need it to be accurate later if I'm not making lineups. So I do like the Pirates in this spot, going up against Matt Manning. 4.12% home runs allowed, 41.5% hard hits, 90.3 miles an hour of exit velo, and a 9.8% barrel rate, 4.32 ERA, but a 5.48 xFIP, only striking out 17.6% of hitters. Are you maybe zeroing in on which team I might be playing for some value tonight in that stack that I mentioned? Kind of like the Pirates side of things here. Jack Suwinski up at the top, tons and tons of power, 21 homers on the season, 275 ISO, 18.4% barrels, 50% hard hits. And oh, by the way, he only cost 3,500, 3,100 on the left side against a pitcher giving up all that contact. It's a pretty good spot for Mr. Jack Suwinski up there if he's hitting up there. Mamba says, no, I had G-Man lock button tonight. I actually did like him in this lineup today if he was on the team. It's a weird acquisition. They sent him to the Padres. It was him and Rich Hill to the Padres, as though those two players are going to solve all the Padres' problems. Just a really weird pickup. That was the one that I forgot at the top of the show. Feels like a Brian Cashman. This is what I said in the chat, and I think it's true. It feels like a Brian Cashman, like, man, those assholes keep calling into WFAN, the sports talk radio show channel in New York. Man, those assholes keep calling into WFAN. I guess I got to do something to appease these guys. It's like a low-cost trade to just make it look like you've done something. That's really what it feels like, because the Padres can't be thinking that Rich Hill and G-Man Choi are going to get them over the top, make a playoff run. Like, come on. Let's be realistic about this. That said, they're two capable guys. Like, I can see how that front office arrived on those two players in that kind of through that kind of a prism. But, yeah, weak trade, weird trade. So, again, this is the projected version of the Pirates lineup, but it's pretty likely to be something along these lines. And I think that the top end is playable. So I left off after Jack Sawinski there. But Brian Reynolds, definitely playable. He's been their best player over time, is just having a kind of a down season after signing his extension. Only 12 home runs, 8 stolen bases. That was 9 home runs, then 10 home runs for the longest time. So seeing him at up to 12 is good. Blue Jays, Bo Bichette. Yeah, the Blue Jays also acquired Paul DeJong from the Cardinals, so we'll update that lineup when we get there too, which I think might be bad news about that Bo Bichette knee injury that we saw last night. He's not in the lineup today, so we'll see what happens with Bo Bichette. Knock on wood that he comes back. It's a player that we obviously like. Star caliber player. We don't want him to get hurt for a long period of time. So, yeah, Brian Reynolds, he's just cheap for his talent. 4,300, 3,400, highly playable in the outfield, easy to get to. Power, speed, 104 WRC plus on the season is not where we expected him to be. But 11.9% barrels, 48.6% hard hits. Those are actually both way up from last year. If you look over on, this is the annoying part, I can't highlight things without popping the thing back up. If you look over here, those numbers are both well up from last season. So technically, maybe just getting a little bit unlucky to have things not dropping in, smoking the ball, a lot of atom balls. I haven't watched a lot of Pirates games this year, so I haven't really seen him that much. So I don't have a read on that part of it, and I haven't really dug into him that much. But just a very capable player for a very affordable price. And the price even averages down when you get like McCutchen at 36.29. Even though he's cooled a little bit in terms of his individual output, McCutchen still gets on base at a 380 clip, has a 117 WRC plus overall, walks 16.3% of the time, and still can hit for power, 44.2% hard hit rate on the season, 10 homers, 10 steals. So I think he's a valuable part of the lineup. Henry Davis for 2,900, same price on FanDuel at 2,900, easily swappable part with McCutchen. I think the rookie's very good. 238, 333, 381 over 144, 4 homers already, 3 steals, 97 WRC plus, but small sample, we don't really worry about that. It's just nice to see him provide the counting stats and kind of connect at this level. Good spot for him in the lineup, hitting cleanup too. Andy Rodriguez, 2,100, 2,500, great value option when you have to play catchers on DK, especially hitting fifth now. Switch hitter, kid that they project to hit for power, hit at the major league level big time. 1 home run already in his 39 plate appearances, only an 86 WRC plus, but again, we don't care. This entire bottom of the lineup is just made up of kids who haven't had much opportunity yet. Jared Triolo, Josh Palacios, Alika Williams, and guy that I like down at the bottom of the lineup, 2 home runs already in only 27 plate appearances, power for days in his profile, $2,300, $2,600 shortstop Liover Peguero here. Definitely an interesting part on both sites to help create value at a premium position. I like how he goes from here to wrap around with the top end of the lineup. For what he does well, he can drive in some runs from the bottom of the lineup. Kind of like Peguero hiding down there. So Mamba says, do you think the ownership changes a lot with Choi out of the lineup since he was the highest owned player? Was he the highest owned player? Shit. I didn't realize that the Pirates were that popular today. Are they crazy popular? I thought I was being a little bit sneaky with that spot. I might have to rethink my value team. Let me see where the boys across town have them. They don't have any real popularity. All single-digit popularity up and down on RG. Without giving away numbers, does Stochastic have it dramatically differently, or am I just misreading what you're asking there, Mamba? Did you mean like within the team he was the most highly owned player? I do think taking him out of the lineup, it's an impact to the lineup, but I actually like the impact because it allows Henry Davis and Rodriguez to slide up. Peguero just kind of stays hidden down at the bottom of the lineup. I just like the bump for Davis and Rodriguez there. 2 capable rookies. Yeah, so give us the numbers. I don't have them. I have no access to stochastic data. I'm not a subscriber. I'm not paying them for anything, and they gave me the boot on what I had for my free subscriptions. I regret not building in a back door when I had the access. I think this morning Pirates were the 4th overall stack. Interesting. Well, I see it the same way. I mean, I like the opportunity against Matt Manning here. Johan Oviedo for 6,200, 8,800. Pretty good projection there. I think there's a little bit of potential for him going up against this Tigers team. You can roster a few shares of them for value on the other side of it. There's a couple capable hitters. I would focus on the top end lefties, that being Zach McKinstry, Riley Green, and Kerry Carpenter. And they add Spencer Torkelson and maybe Matt Vierling and just 1 through 5 it. Or maybe you include either Akil Baddoo or Jake Rogers from the bottom of the lineup to differentiate things a little bit. Torkelson's been a lot better this year than he's getting credit for. Big steps forward for him. 176 ISO, 15 homers. Nice little contact profile with 12.6% barrels, 49.5% hard hits. Walking 9.6, striking out 24.2. Little steps forward, but a lot of steps forward in the right direction in terms of the contact profile. So maybe not a total bust of a first overall pick. Riley Green's been their best hitter overall for 4,500, 3,100. He's easy to get to against a righty here. If you're going to Tiger stacks, Kerry Carpenter's their best power hitter. He hits left-handed as well, so he's easy to include. And Vierling has gotten most of that production, 272, 334, 393, 105 WRC plus, 7 homers. Most of that's come in same-handed matchup, so against a righty, he's fine. Miggy has been better against lefties this year, bad overall. Javi Baez has been bad across the board. Baddoo at least has like minor production for counting stats in small samples. 5 homers, 6 stolen bases this year. Similar output in years past in samples. Jake Rogers, 12 homers on the season, 225 ISO. So a lot of power from like an irregular contributor, 4,100, 2,700 at the catcher spot. Interesting enough to be playable in stacks as a catcher. Bichette MRI came... All right, Bird Nerd says 3 minutes behind. Bichette MRI came back clean with inflammation, no structural damage, won't miss extended time. Awesome. Yeah, DeYoung I wasn't expecting to be in today's lineup. That's they just made that acquisition a couple hours ago. That would have been a surprise if he had gotten there in time for tonight. So the Tigers, minor option in terms of value, but I do think there's value in going to Oviedo. Wish he was a little bit cheaper for action on FanDuel. 8,800 is kind of a big price tag for him. Not a high-end pitcher by any means. 4.60 ERA and a matching xFIP, so he is who he is. 2.52% home runs is pretty good. 8.2% barrels and 40.1% hard hits, though. A little bit of premium contact available, which is where you get the idea of maybe some lefty power carrying through. 20.5% strikeout rate and a 9.5% walk rate allows too many opportunities. Again, not a high-end pitcher, but the price is right on DK for shots at the Tigers lineup. I think there's enough flexibility either way that it's a push-pull situation. Either side could work out, or it could just fall into the middle where he doesn't have a good start. They didn't have a great game because they're the Tigers, but they scored a few runs. I think that's around where it is. Shannon Lambert says, Manning in play for me if Pirates are popular. I don't love it. I think it's such a deep slate, and there are a lot of similarly priced options for value. Where like I prefer Oviedo on the other side greatly for less money on the DraftKings slate if that's where we're talking. Better strikeout rate. Like Manning did have that one game where he was part of the combined no-hitter. I know he had a good start there. Not sure what else he's done in individual performances this year, but overall not a great strikeout rate. He was better for strikeouts last year. Slightly. 18.3% last year in 63 innings. 14.8% in 85 and a third the year before. Has been okay at limiting home runs despite a fair amount of premium contact, especially in the exit velo department. And this year the home runs are up, and a lot of home runs are just kind of happenstance. Like home runs, that's why xFIP takes home runs out of the equation because they're wonky. So xFIP normalizes to a league average home run rate. And he's got a higher xFIP by more than a run than his ERA. I don't love the Manning option. I don't want to talk you too far out of it because the Pirates are obviously a gettable lineup. It's a lineup with like 3.5 major leaguers and then a whole bunch of rookies who may or may not be good one day. So definitely it's a targetable opponent for Matt Manning. If you're going to play Matt Manning, this is one of the better spots in which to do it. I'll give him that much credit. And he doesn't project out completely dead, right? It's not like this is a 12-point projection on FanDuel. That's on a shorter slate. That's a much better, more interesting play. Let's put it that way. On FanDuel, it's got enough value. On DK, there's probably some better value options. There's better value options on both sites, but it's at least like 7,200 versus the 88 for Oviedo on the other side. I maybe prefer the Manning play a little bit because of the high price for Oviedo on the FanDuel slate, but it's not anything about Manning that drives it up, if you get me. So Pirate stacks, yes. Tiger stacks, meh, but playable and probably should have at least a couple if you're building 150 lineups. Oviedo as a minor dart throw on the DK for value. And I'll throw Manning into the mix. Why not? As a minor, very low end. Probably not going to work out. Kind of a value play. Just for Shannon. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Let's move on. Any trades come through in the last few minutes? Anybody see? Problem with the Pirates is that they can hit 15 doubles and 1 homer. You'll sweat the whole night if you play them. Well, we'll see about that, Mamba. Yes, that'll be in my lineups. Yeah, that's totally likely with this team. Hopefully you get the day where Sawinski's got to get his, and then you get like the maybe Peguero gets one from late in the lineup, and then maybe like a Henry Davis gets you one, and a handful of doubles in there, and you're off and running for a correlated play at those cheap prices. You get enough out of it, and you're combined with say the Braves or the Padres or one of the other high end teams and a good pitcher. It all comes together well. I think you can get there. Orioles and the Blue Jays, an interesting matchup. To answer a question that was asked in the chat a little bit earlier, I missed who asked it. Hyunjin Ryu has, I wouldn't imagine much of a pitch count today. He went 85 pitches in his second rehab start. He made 2 rehab starts recently, and he's been working all season up to this, up to building up arm strength after Tommy John last year. It was a long absence. I don't know what he's got in the tank. I don't know that he's going to be any good whatsoever. All reports are, from the team, obviously, as they're watching him pitch. Oh, he looks dynamite. He looks amazing. It's the old Hyunjin Ryu who was competitive for Cy Young Awards 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, or whenever the hell that was at this point. I don't know what we're getting from 36-year-old Hyunjin Ryu coming back from Tommy John surgery, but I do think 90 pitches plus is in play. I don't expect much of a pitch count. It's not like he's a young arm they're trying to protect. They'll just they'll put the pedal to the floor and max him out if they can. Going to be going with a 6-man rotation apparently in Toronto as well. But as you can see on the screen here, this is last year before the injury. Wasn't pitching well. 5.67 ERA, a 4.24 xFIP, 14.2% strikeouts is a big dip. The walk rate was still good. He wasn't getting completely burnt, but he was allowing some power here, and has always allowed a little bit of pop. So the year before that, maybe this was just hiding the elbow pain, and eventually it just couldn't do it anymore and went for the surgery. This year, though, the year before that, a full season, 31 starts, 169 innings, a decent xFIP at 3.94, an okay ERA at 4.37, home run rate, a little at 3.42, 41.6% hard hits, and only a 20.4% strikeout rate. So kind of a down season in 2021 as well. I don't know that he's a premium part of the slate. His pricing is cheap. He's not. It's not showing here because depending on which way I didn't have time to fix him because I just completely wasn't expecting him. So I didn't have time to go in and fix whatever changed about his naming convention that's not showing the prices and the statistics at the same time. But I felt that the statistics would be more important than the price for a pitcher that I'm kind of just saying I don't think I want to get to too much of. Given that it's the Orioles, a capable team on the other side, a pretty deep slate. The projection is carrying through. He doesn't project all that well in this spot. And if there is an innings cap that we don't know about, then why go there? Deep slate. Where were we? If we're going to Orioles bats, you do get Adley Rutschman back in the leadoff spot. I like that spot quite a bit. Same principle applies. Catcher in the leadoff role, especially one who hits as well as he does, gets on base as well as he does, provides as much correlated scoring as he does for 3,300. You're getting a discount on a very, very good hitter in general. Even if he played a different position, that would be a good price for this hitter. And he slots in at catcher with a bonus 3/4 of a plate appearance in the leadoff spot. So that's a really premium catcher. Just in a vacuum, he's a good catcher bat. 7.41 in the home run model. He strikes out 15.8% of the time, walks at a 13.8% clip. He's an elite catcher option. Ryan Mountcastle hitting second. I love that spot in the lineup for Mountcastle. He's got major power. He's got the most power on this team. Anthony Santander right now is the most reliable home run hitter. Although it's close, he's got 18 and 437. And Mountcastle has 13 in 305 after missing time. But he's a premium power hitter, Mountcastle. Santander is a great option at 4,200, 3,200 first base eligibility in addition to outfield on FanDuel. Austin Hayes in the cleanup role against the lefty, 3,300, 2,800. Good bat to have in the cleanup spot for very cheap prices across sites. He hasn't hit for a ton of power this season, only 9 home runs, but a decent triple slash, good run creation marks, decent contact profile. Gunnar drops to 5th in the lineup. He's been kind of inept against lefties, but that's why I was like, oh, Adley in the leadoff role. I like that because the projected had Hayes in the leadoff role, Adley hitting second, and Gunnar out of the lineup. I just like seeing a capable enough kid, even though he's struggled in same-handed matchups so far. 17 home runs on the season, a 229 ISO, gets on base, hits the ball very hard with an 11.1% barrel rate, 54.2% hard hit rate, fits into multiple positions in the middle infield, or in the infield rather, third base and shortstop specifically. So I like that they started him, give him the shot here against the lefty, and especially if we're short starting Ryu, or if they just get to Ryu, you got to figure he's going to see some some righties out of the bullpen in a very taxed bullpen situation for Toronto. So I like the spot for Gunnar. Jordan Westberg is another premium prospect in that lineup. No Colton Cowser, but you do have Ramon Urias, who hides a lot of power in that bat for cheap prices. Triple position eligibility for 2,700 on FanDuel. 2 positions at 2,200 on DK. Tons of reasons to go to Urias in your stacks of Orioles. McKenna and Mateo kind of mix and match pieces at the bottom of the lineup. And then Kyle Bradish on the mound, 8,700, 9,700 across sites. I like him a lot better at the FanDuel, at the DK price, 8,700. Perfectly viable mix-in option. 9,700 is pushing it on FanDuel on a really deep slate. He didn't project out in that top end of the board that we looked at. He was more down toward that bottom where I was saying, and you go all the way down here and still have 26 points. That was Kyle Bradish. There is definite upside going up against the tough Toronto lineup, but as we discussed, no Bo Bichette in the lineup. I think this one dropped. No, it didn't. As we discussed, no Bo Bichette in the lineup, but certainly some very, very capable hitters, very capable power hitters. So Bradish isn't safe, but he's got upside, 22.4% strikeouts on the season, only a 6.4% walk rate, a 3.89 xFIP, a 3.29 ERA. Has been very good and has been pitching fairly deep into games, 104 innings in 19 starts. Pretty good. So I like the spot for Bradish, like it better on DK than FanDuel, but I would have some shares if I was playing a full slate on FanDuel. I would include him. Jake Burger to the Marlins. Marlins got snookered. Not surprising. I like Jake Burger, but he's not. We've talked about it numerous times, guys. We all know he's not a guy who's going to hit 50 home runs. That was more along the lines of Brent Rooker output than it was Aaron Judge output. White Sox just don't care. Now they're cashing in on the movable parts that they've got. They've got a good young core, so it should be a quick rebuild for them, honestly. Need to work on the pitching staff, but like Eloy Jimenez, if he could stay healthy, I almost said stay safe, which would have been weird. Eloy Jimenez is a star caliber player if he's ever healthy for a full season. Lubov is obviously a star/superstar. I've got him as today's home run pick. We'll talk about that matchup in a minute. I like their ability to rebuild that team on the fly. So I think it makes sense to cash in some of the options that they had. So we talked about the Orioles side. We talked about Bradish. We talked about Ryu being not necessarily limited, but maybe limited on just ability at this point is more the concern. Rosario batting cleanup for the Dodgers. We'll get there, Shannon. That's a good call out, though. That's an interesting option in a cleanup spot for what I imagine is going to be a ludicrously popular Dodgers team in that matchup against Kenny Waldichuk. But I love that spot for Los Angeles. So if you're going to Blue Jays bats, we don't expect Bo Bichette. Probably get Whit Merrifield up in the leadoff spot. He hit his 9th home run last night, 21 stolen bases. We've talked about him numerous times. Very good hit tool, good on-base skills, a little bit of individual power, very good stolen base skills, very good correlated scoring opportunities for 4,600, 3,400 second base outfield. Just plug and play. George Springer should be back in the lineup. 13 homers, 13 steals, down to 96 WRC plus after popping back above the waterline. He's been up and down this season, 5,200, 2,900 for his track record over his career. For the hitter that I know that George Springer really is, I'm happy to go to him at those prices. Brandon Belt, still very, very cheap, 3,000, 2,800. Decision point with Vladdy on DK. That sucks as usual. But he's cheap. He's easy to get to as an alternative bat on the DK slate. You don't want to do it too many times, but if you're building out 20 Blue Jays stacks, you should probably do it in a handful just for differentiation's sake. And Belt is very good. He's got power. He's got a great contact profile. He's creating runs 17% better than average over his 284 opportunities. He's got half as many home runs as Vladdy in half as many plate appearances. It's not like Brandon Belt hasn't been good this year, so it's kind of weird that he's still so cheap. Vladdy's a superstar. Matt Chapman's been just mashing the ball all season, 18.3% barrels, 59.2% hard hits. It was an outrageous start to the season, but he's maintained a lot of the premium contact. Hasn't gone for tons and tons of home runs, 14 homers on the season, but still maintaining a 203 ISO and 27% better than average for run creation. That leads the team, or it leads this version of the team anyway. Dalton Varsho, disappointing year for him. 12 homers, 12 stolen bases is fine in terms of the output for a player price like this, but only a 75 WRC plus from a guy that they needed to be a contributor this year. Only 6.6% barrels, 38.4% hard hits. The hard hits are actually up 3 points from last year, but he got by on a lot of barrels last year. 10.2% barrels down to 6.6. That's the difference in his power output this season. It's probably a little bit of the difference in his ISO and his triple slash as well. Danny Jansen, playable catcher. Santiago Espinal, Kevin Kiermaier, mix and match parts mostly here for their defense. So, probably Orioles. Well, maybe Bradish on DK, Orioles bats, Bradish on FanDuel, Blue Jays bats. I don't think I would go to Hyunjin Ryu on either side. He's very cheap, so if you believe, you can take your shots, but I think I need to see it before we go there. Just given that he wasn't very good 2 years ago, wasn't very good last year before the surgery, and he's 36, what are we expecting? Bernard, Terry just wanted to shout out how valuable. I thought it was Terry just wanted to shout out, like I wanted to shout about something. as I started to read that sentence, I was like, what did I do? Bernard wants to shout out how valuable the content has been. Use the suggested stacks tool every single day and really appreciate your YouTube content as well. Can't wait until I chip in. Bernard, I welcome any chip ins that you'd like to throw my way in terms of whatever you're thinking. 8Game says, who do you think has the best available projections for baseball right now? Should I cancel my Stochastic Premium? I would never tell you to cancel anything at Stochastic 8Game. I like those guys quite a bit, except for we don't have to get into the, the specifics again. But no, I like Stochastic quite a bit, and they have home run data. I mean, they have excellent data. There's no arguing with it. I have my issues with some of the decisions about the approach to some things. I think they've gotten a little bit betting oriented, but it makes total sense for the business. I understand how they get there because that's where all those bonuses are and all the residuals and the payouts from all those offers and everything. Like that's why you're constantly hearing, hey, click here, take this offer, do this, do that. I get what's going on. They are high priced, but they're still the best available data in town until I put something out there. No, but they are very, very good data. I don't have a good evaluation them heads up against anybody else, except for honestly my own data, which is what I use, and I have good results. So, Fanatic has his opinions in the chat. Yeah, look, I mean, there's there's a reason that people who are very good on shows and good at doing content and all of that, who also have good acumen for DFS, a lot of wins in DFS, a lot of knowledge about the specific sports that they cover for the most part, are doing a lot of those shows. Like, they're not straight up just salespeople or pitchmen or anything like that. I like to think that most of those guys, we all know that those guys are successful and know their shit. But yeah, there is a lot of hyping and a lot of pitching involved with working over there. So it's again, not to say anything negative about anybody. It's part of the business. At some point, I hope to have that many sponsors and have to have that problem. Let's put it that way. So no, I wouldn't advise you to cancel it, ACAM. But if it's unaffordable, obviously you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you're not making money through DFS and you're paying too much for a subscription that you can't afford. That's what I would say about that. So it's a specific fit. Let's move on. Just gonna derail me and have me talking about that all day. Did I finish that game? I think I did. Yeah, we talked about everything in this one. Let's move on. Angels with Patrick Sandoval up on the sacrificial altar to the Braves. I think Sandoval's a very talented pitcher. He's over time. I'm just grabbing the Angels lineup as I talk. Over time, he's been good at checking home run power. This season, sitting at a 1.62% home run rate allowed on 6.5% barrels, 6.9 degree average launch angle. Last year, that was 1.25% home runs on a 5.7% barrel rate. Year before, 3.03 on a 6.3 degree launch, 6.1% barrel rate. Launch was up a little bit last year, but it didn't really burn him, given 33.9% hard hits, 35.4 the year before, 34.3 this year. Pretty good at limiting premium contact. Pretty good at keeping the ball off the fat part of the bat, so to speak, and inducing ground balls, which could have a limiting impact on the Braves. Does have a limiting impact on the Braves in the home run model here. As you can see, only Matt Olson on the ridiculously hard-hitting team is over the magic number in the home run model. Deservedly so, with 36 home runs on the season. But to have the Braves even capped to this degree is pretty impressive. Does that put Patrick Sandoval in play for me against this ridiculous Braves team? At 71 on DK, I think you can take your SP2 darts. At 8,000 on FanDuel, I don't think I would go there on such a deep slate. He doesn't project out well. He's got an 18.8% strikeout rate. He's got a 4.38 xFIP, a 9.5% walk rate. That's too many opportunities to throw at the Braves. 1.41 whip. He's a good strike thrower, 12.2% swing, 28.8% CSW, but it hasn't resulted in strikeouts this year. Just too much contact, even if it's not premium contact, to be allowing against this Braves lineup. So I'd be concerned about the Sandoval spot, but I think you can throw a few value darts on DK. They'd be hyper contrarian. I can't imagine he's all that popular. You'd probably be attacking some Braves ownership. I do think the Braves are playable despite Sandoval's acumen for keeping the ball in the park. They're just too good not to. So if they're unpopular, I think it makes sense to maybe take out a few extra shares. They're very expensive, though, so you don't have to do it. It's not a great value play or anything like that. You're just playing for their everyday ridiculous potential. They have Kevin Pillar in the lineup instead of Eddie Rosario today. That was anticipated. Orlando Arcia, Michael Harris, best two bottom hitters in the league outside of maybe Ezequiel Duran and Leody Taveras. Arguably, back and forth for those guys, but they've all been providing value from the bottom of the lineup all season long. Except for Michael Harris's first month and a half. That was awful. But he's really pulled it together. Ozuna, 22 home runs on the season. Sean Murphy, one of the best catchers in baseball, 17 home runs on the season, creating runs 44% better than average. I gave you Olson's home run total. He's also got an 18.5% barrel rate, 58.2% hard hit rate to both lead this team in both stats. Then you get the core of Acuna up top, Albies, and Riley. Each of them has 24 home runs apiece. 241, 241, and 226 on the ISOs, 165, 113, 120 WRC plus. Are we really worried about playing these guys against Patrick Sandoval? I don't think so. I think there's upside for the Braves that could go a little bit ignored in the matchup today. They don't project as well as they normally do. They don't have the home run potential that they normally do. But if that takes away a little bit of public popularity, I think it makes sense to go there. And then there's Spencer Strider on the mound. The way I wrote it in the notes version of the article today, where I'm just looking at clip content a little bit, keep it a little bit short so that I can get through 14 games. Just play Spencer Strider as much or as little as you want to relative to the field. I really don't need to say very much about the best pitcher in baseball. 39.6% strikeouts, 19.6% CSW, 19.6% swinging strike rate. 34.5% CSW, just ridiculous strike thrower, ridiculous strikeout artist. If you look into the game logs, which I'm not a game log hunter, but there's good reason to do it with Strider. If you're concerned at all about the power, about the odd home runs, the odd run output that he's allowed in spots, he's up to a 3.73 ERA, but a sparkling 2.67 xFIP on the season. Most of those bumps have come when he's allowed to go back out for the seventh inning, face a team through the third time through the top of the lineup after dazzling over 6 innings. So he goes out with these major strikeout totals and an awesome fantasy score, and then walks a guy, allows a single, and allows a 3-run homer, and it dings him a little bit, and it makes some of the numbers skew a little bit. He is every bit as dominant as he's ever been. There is no reason to avoid playing Spencer Strider against the Angels, unless that's to maybe take out a few shares of a quality Angels lineup. Luis Rengifo surprises in the leadoff spot again. 320 on base for him. Below 300 on base percentages each of the last 2 years. We like him for his sneaky power. He did hit a home run in that spot last night. He'll be more popular than he's been in the leadoff role, but still cheap. 3,500, 2,700. double position eligibility on DK, triple on FanDuel. A good asset anywhere in the lineup. Just weird to have him in the leadoff spot. I would probably land like Randall Grichuk there, like I said yesterday. I think Grichuk makes a ton of sense up there. He hit a home run as well yesterday in his Angels debut. 9 homers on the season for him in only 267 plate appearances, up to a 197 ISO, 307, 363, 504. Quietly, very nice little half season for Randall Grichuk so far. There's a guy named Shohei Ohtani in this lineup. I think I've heard of him. Pretty sure he hits home runs. Pretty sure he's a pretty good pitcher. I think you can certainly go to shares of Shohei Ohtani. I'm just getting some text messages from the my buddies who break news via text message. Let's see if there's anything in here. No, it was just the burger one from a few minutes ago, and then some discussion about the burger one. So Strider's easily in play, and then if you're going to the Angels, as I was saying, I think Ohtani is obvious. He's got to be a part of most of your Angels stacks if you're stacking Angels. Then you get into like CJ Cron, newly acquired, major power upside for him, 11 home runs on the season. Moustakas has been kind of quietly interesting over 240 plate appearances. 9 home runs, 268, 338, 441, 174 ISO. Not great, but enough lefty power to believe in for 3,200, 2,700. Hunter Renfroe, Mickey Moniak, that's a good little power core from Cron to Grichuk now. And then Matt Thaiss has pop for 3,600, 2,500 at catcher. Zach Neto's got a great hit tool in the 9 spot, so that kind of makes sense. He's also got 8 unexpected home runs, so it's kind of interesting. Erod declined a Dodgers trade. Why would you decline a trade to the Dodgers to stay in Detroit? He must hate Los Angeles. If the Dodgers were on his 10-team trade, no trade, that's crazy. There are 10 teams worse than the Dodgers to play for in baseball. He must not like Los Angeles. I wouldn't say that he likes losing, Shannon, but maybe he doesn't care about losing so much as he cares about just collecting a paycheck. Some of these guys do look at it just as a job and don't really care either way about winning or losing, oddly enough, in a competitive sport. So minor shares of the Angels. I think they're playable from top to bottom, but it's one of the worst matchups in all of baseball with Strider on the hill on the other side. So really very, very tempered interest in them. Definite interest in the Braves going up against Sandoval. Not to go crazy with it, but I think edging out the field by a little bit makes some sense. I think you can roster some Sandoval against the Braves. 7,100 in particular as an SP2 on the DK slate makes some sense. Let's keep it moving. The Twins, the Cards. Let me grab the updated version of the Cards lineup here. Tommy Edman back for the Cards. Better overall player at this point than DeYoung. DeYoung's hitting for more power. But Edman's got some pop. Edman's got some speed. All right. So, Miles Michaelis, 6,900, 7,400. Okay projection for those prices. Pushing a 30-point FanDuel projection. Only 15.9% strikeouts, but we know this Twins team, they have this confirmed version of the lineup has a 29.3% strikeout rate for the season. That is a lot of strikeouts. Even Miles Michaelis can find some strikeouts there. That's basically double his personal strikeout rate for the season. He's only at 15.9. Soft tosser, not a big-time strikeout guy. 6.8% swinging, 24.7% CSW. There is a little bit of additional strikeout padding for Miles Michaelis beyond what you see in his numbers. 4.6% walk rate, keeps himself out of trouble, but does allow a lot of contact, obviously. That can turn into premium contact. That can turn into home run balls. And the Twins definitely have a decent amount of power in the lineup. So I think if you go to any Michaelis value, which I do think is playable for 6,900 on DK, 7,400 on FanDuel, less so on FanDuel, more so as an SP2 on DK. I think you would definitely want to hedge in other lineups with some twin stacks. I think the top of their lineup makes a ton of sense. Carlos Correa, Edward Julian, Max Kepler, Byron Buxton, all those guys hit for power. I know Correa's been down in terms of the triple slash, but still 12 home runs on the season. That's not nothing. A 43.4% hard hit rate for 4,700, 3,000. The struggles are kind of cooked into the price. Julian's been a star over the last 2 months. Still only costs 3,300, 3,400. Helps you average down the Correa price on the DK slate. So does Max Kepler with all his power. He's only 3,100 over there. 15 homers on the season, a 213 ISO. Hits lefty against Miles Michaelis. He's definitely going to have some soft, fat-looking pitches to take a shot at. Strikes out at a 22% clip, which is the best strikeout rate in this lineup, too. 31.5% strikeouts for Byron Buxton, 17 home runs at 230 ISO. Definitely playable, 4,900, 3,200. It's a good price. If I told you you get Byron Buxton for that on opening day, you would have been like, holy shit, let me roster 150 twin stacks around him. It's an absurd price for that player's talent. Jorge Polanco, multi-position eligible on DK, is very good flexibility since you don't have to decide between him and Edward Julian now. 4,400, that's a premium power hitter that people probably won't go to all that much, even in twin stacks. I think people will skip them for the allure of like a Matt Wallner for cheaper. Probably not for like Joey Gallo, but I think he'll be mixed and matched a little bit more, where I think for me, he'd be a priority play in twin stacks. He's a very, very good power hitter over time. Scuffled last year with a lot of injuries. Only 7 home runs in 236 plate appearances. This year, only 5 in, which one is he? The 141, right? 5 in 141. Gotta keep my eyes on the right tab here. So, sorry, he had 16 in 445 plate appearances last year. So he made more plate appearances than I was giving him credit for, but he was in and out of the lineup with injuries. Year before, 33 homers in 644 plate appearances, also stole 11 bases that season. Very good season, very good player overall. So I like Polanco. I think he's a focused player, especially with that multi-position on DK. And you don't care that he and Julian play the same position on FanDuel. Wallner, definitely a playable part, 2,400, 3,000. Great start to his career, 74 plate appearances, 5 home runs already at 274 ISO. Good little value bat down there. Jeffress has value as a power hitting catcher. Joey Gallo's got value for 3,000, 2,600 with all of his power. It's infrequent. He's got a 42.7% strikeout rate that supports the idea of Miles Mikolas upside, but he could definitely hit 2 to 5 home runs against Miles Mikolas in only 3 plate appearances. And he could strike out 10 times in the same sample. Michael A. Taylor, 12 unowned home runs, 11 unowned stolen bases at the bottom of the lineup. Always got to throw him into the mix. Not a premium bat by any means, not a focus, not a priority. But if you build 15 twin stacks, he should be in 3 or 4 of them to 5 of them. Card side of this one going up against Pablo. 10-8, 10-5. Pablo Lopez is expensive. Pablo Lopez has a great strikeout rate, but has kind of come back to earth in some spots this year. He's kind of hit some bumps in the road along the way after an outrageously good start. 4.13 ERA, 3.7 xFIP, 14.4% swinging strikes, though, and a 30.2% strikeout rate. It's worth taking some shots on, even at a high price. I don't think he'll be outrageously popular, given some struggles. 7.9% barrels, 3.21% home runs. The Cardinals certainly have enough bats to get to him here. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, not the least of which, those 2 guys, plus Wilson Contreras, Lars Nootbaar, Tyler O'Neill. It's a good 1 through 7 for the Cards today. So I think there's some threat to Pablo Lopez, but he projects well enough. He's in the mix in that next tier down of high-end starters. He's very high cost for being in that spot and not being competitive with the top 2 pitchers, but he projects well enough that on any given slate in this matchup he could succeed. And he has been succeeding for the most part throughout the season. Also gives you really good depth, 128 and 2/3 in only 21 starts. It's a lot of depth of innings pitched. Good shots at the bonuses. Cards bats, like I was saying, definitely the 2 stars are in most of your card stacks. Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado on the corners in the infield. You just pay the premium prices. They're high-end players. Nootbaar's a good lefty leading off. Tyler O'Neill hasn't been great this season, but a major source of power 2 years ago with 34 home runs. A guy who does hit for a lot of power when he's in the lineup. Only 2 homers this season and 140 plate appearances, but there's massive ceiling there for 3,500, 2,500. Jordan Walker's been good this year, 2,800, 2,900, easy to get to. Edmund, 7 homers, 14 steals, only a 90 WRC plus this season, 237, 303, 391. Was kind of scuffling a little bit there, but a good player overall, a little bit of mid-range power. Cheap, multi-position eligible. Taylor Motter, dead minimum price on both sites. Multi-position at least helps with some flexibility. Not much of a hitter, but a couple okay minor league seasons. Never really landed very much at the major league level. Not much of a player overall. Dylan Carlson in the lineup, despite being in trade rumors. 2,126 as long as he's in the lineup. As long as he is in the lineup at lock. Sometimes these words all just mush together as I'm trying to speak a little bit quickly, get all this stuff out. And that one just came out as as long as he's in the lineup at lock, he can be in your lineup, friends. I think that's about it for this one. So it was ranking it out, probably Pablo, Twins bats, Cards bats, Miles Mikolas value darts. Miles Michaelis is an extreme dart throw as a value. I hope everybody knows what I mean when I say that. I mean that it's not likely to succeed. It's very, very thin, but it could possibly, maybe, possibly succeed. If you're concerned about the short start in the last outing, it was because he hit somebody in the back who just told the umpire, like, oh, did he hit me? Because the ball was not coming in very quickly. You remember getting hit in Little League? It probably felt about like that. I think that's all to say about this one. Any trades? Anybody spot anything? I haven't seen anything come through since the burger one. The Reds and the Cubbies. It sucks not playing this slate, especially with a 14-gamer that's like got all this stuff to talk about and is so interesting and everything. But I'm sitting here as I'm looking at this like, I could try and build some lineups now through the second half of the show from 5 to 6, and then I could put them in and make changes while I'm on the way. And like, I'm going to make changes to 150 lineups while I'm on the D train underground heading up to Yankee Stadium. Like, that doesn't seem likely. So if I start building lineups, then it becomes a thing where I'm like still sitting here at 6:45 with a game starting at like 7:05 in the Bronx. Like, and I get there in like the 6th inning, or I just don't go at all. So like, we're not going down that road. But it kind of does suck because this is an interesting, fun slate. Forgot to go back to the tab here. The Reds with Ben Lively. The Cubbies with Justin Steele. Steele is easily the better of these two pitchers, easily the better option. They have similar strikeout rates, 22.3 for him versus 22.1 for Ben Lively on the other side. Steele's just the better pitcher overall. 2.87 ERA, a 3.75 xFIP, 5.4% walk rate. Lively at 3.76, a 4.15 xFIP, a 6.1% walk rate. He's been pitching pretty well outside of the home run issues. 4.64% home runs on only 7.5% barrels, 35.2% hard hits, 89.5 miles an hour of exit velo is a little bit high, but it hasn't been tragic premium contact. He's just gotten a couple spots where, like I said, home runs are a little bit wonky. 67 innings, 11 starts. Pitching in that bandbox in Cincinnati probably doesn't help him. So a little bit of wonkiness in that home run total, but overall he's been pitching okay. On the other side, Steele, in addition to being very comparable in terms of everything else he does, is very good at limiting power. 1.56% home run rate on only 86.4 miles an hour of exit velo, 6% barrels. So I just think Steele is the way better option. Pitching against a frisky Reds lineup that has plenty of power and speed in it in its typical day-to-day form. This version of the lineup, not their ideal, with Kevin Newman hitting 5th, Spencer Steer as good as he is hitting cleanup, Nick Senzel hitting 2nd, no Joey Votto, no Will Benson, couple other parts missing. Stuart Fairchild hitting 9th. Not the best version of the Reds lineup. So a spot that I already like for Steele is a little bit enhanced by the weakened version of the Reds lineup here. So I do think that there's plenty of upside at 9,100 for Justin Steele. Definitely at 9,900, he's a easily playable part of the starting pitching slate. He's a few points down from the premium options that I'd rather get to, but I think he's definitely in the mix for a solid handful of shares at 9,900. Yeah, it was Stephen Leibowitz that hit it on the head there. He hit Happ because Happ got Contreras on the backswing hard, which is a weird reason to hit. Like, it's not intentional. He wasn't sitting there like, if I go lean back like this, I could probably connect with the catcher's helmet with my backswing. Like, it's a silly reason, as Greg Bean Cohn is pointing out. It's a total accident, silly reason. But yeah, I think Michaelis was a little surprised to get the full toss. I think they were just expecting a warning on it. Yeah, Hab wasn't doing it for any malicious reasons. It's just a weird decision on Michaelis' part. He's a weird guy though, so it kind of makes sense. I like Michaelis overall, and I like him in this spot today. Yeah, Arcathelza, I'm just said it. I'm with you. I like that spot. Josh Harrison with the DFA. Got to make room for the Lorenzen acquisition. Right, he was on the Phillies. Right? I'm not making that up, right? So as I was saying, pitching, I do think there's a little bit of value on the bone for Ben Lively. He's got to avoid that home run issue, obviously, but he's got enough strikeout potential. He's got a low enough walk rate, doesn't really put himself in bad situations. I think if you desperately need a $7,200 pitcher and for some reason you've used up all your shares of all these other value guys, I think he's at least playable. It's not good. The Cubbies are good at getting on base. They're good at sequencing. They're good at getting, creating runs. They've got some power. They've still got Cody Bellinger on the team. They just acquired Heimer Candelario, as I referred to earlier in the show. So they added a little bit of pop. I think, it's an unsafe potential value dart for Ben Lively. Let's put it that way. Apparently Michaelis and Hap are friends. Oh, maybe so maybe that's why maybe he just did it like screwing around, knowing that he wasn't going to hurt him if he hit him with with his arm. And maybe just the umpire didn't get the joke and tossed him. He was Michael is definitely like he caught the ball, turned around, and was expecting to go back up to the mound with a warning. And you saw the manager come running out, and I think the announcers and everybody were surprised it wasn't a warning as well. But the ump wasn't having it. Weird one. So yeah, both pitchers in play. But if you're going to Ben Lively, you definitely want to hedge it with some stacks of Cubbies in other spots. They're good enough at getting on base, like I was saying, good enough at sequencing. Tauchman's getting on base a lot, playing great defense for them. Odd person to find at the top of a major league lineup, but he's very, very cheap. Hasn't been priced up for the correlated scoring potential. So I think you can play some Tauchman if you're going to Cubs stacks. Nico's still a little bit pricey, 4,800, 3,300 on across sites. He's a decent hit tool, decent stolen base option, 1% below average creating runs, no real power to speak of. I just think he's an odd fit. He's a little overpriced, but he's playable because he's a middle infielder on both sites in both positions for a fair price. It's just a little elevated for what I think of him. Ian Happ, we were just talking about him, 150 ISO, 115 WRC plus, a 373 on base percentage, 10 home runs. Great correlated scoring option, if nothing else, with Dansby Swanson, with Cody Bellinger, with Heimer Candelario that follows him. If I'm rostering Cubbies, my primary focus is right here. I would include Morel in that. That's my primary focus through the heart of the lineup rather than the first two spots. These guys are more bolt-on parts, and then these guys are bolt-on parts in a lower end, fewer plate appearances, lower end performers. Chris Morel is hyper expensive. $5,000 on DK is somewhat affordable at second base. $4,100 is really pricey on FanDuel. 257 plate appearances, 281, 344, 541, 260 ISO, 16 home runs. We know that most of those home runs came in one big clump, though. It's not like he's been consistently spreading those out. He hasn't been bad. I'm not saying that, but he's been like a part-time role. It's a lot to pay for him. I do like that he comes with triple position eligibility, makes him really flexible around the rest of the power core. It's just a lot to pay for him. You do get help averaging him down with 2,800 for Candelario, 32 for Dansby Swanson is very cheap for Swanson, 32 for Ian Happ is pretty cheap for him. So like if you use some of those parts, or if you just like straight line this, it becomes an average, including Cody Bellinger in there, of just 3,450 on the FanDuel slate. If you go from Happ through Morel on DK, 5-player stack for 4,400, that's pretty affordable for that group of hitters against Ben Lively. So I do think there's upside for that specific stack here. And then if you're building a bunch of them, you bolt on Tauchman and Horner in a variety of shares. Mark Canha in the Brewers lineup. Okay. And proud we are of all of them. Hitting 6th. So that lineup goes Christian Yelich, Contreras, Carlos Santana, Willy Adames, Sal Frelick, Canha, Monasterio, Turang, and Weimer. So Canha's a mix-in part later in that lineup. You certainly want to include him if you're building a bunch of Brewers lineups. He's a nice little piece of value in there. Professional major league hitter with a little bit of mid-range, mid-teens type of power in a full season. Playable part, nothing more. Reds bats, Ellie up top, followed by Senzel. Flawed player, but at very cheap pricing. Multi-position, triple position for 28 on FanDuel is good. 3,200 in the outfield on DK. You can take or leave him. 8 homers, 5 stolen bases, only an 80 WRC+. Ellie's obviously the star player, the focus up at the top, or potential to be a star player. Currently 2% below average creating runs, 32.9% strikeouts, and priced really, really highly on DK. So it's an interesting decision around Ellie. Matt McLain has been excellent since he got called up 301 plate appearances ago. 300, 372, 522. Creating runs 36% better than average. Second base and shortstop, 5,800, 3,900. He's been better than Ellie while they've both been up here. I know Ellie's got 7 homers and 17 steals. McLain's got 11 homers and 8 steals and has been creating runs a lot better. So I kind of lean, if I had to decide between the two, I would lean into a cheaper Matt McLain on the DK slate. He's more expensive appropriately, I think, on FanDuel I just think the FanDuel pricing for those two makes more sense right now. I think Ellie, over time, is the more talented, more successful player. Spencer Steer has had a very strong season. Hitting cleanup today. He's perfectly fine in that role. 4,700, 3,400. Cheap, multi-position eligible. Kevin Newman is a take or leave option, hitting 5th, 2,926. At least he's very cheap, multi-position eligible. 3 homers, 7 steals, 83 WRC plus, and 228. Christian Encarnacion Strand had a good game last night. 68 WRC plus overall, 1 homer and 44 plate appearances. He will continue to improve. 48.4% hard hits at least. Definite buy on Christian Encarnacion Strand in red stacks. Premium prospect. Tyler Stevenson, TJ Friedl, Stuart Fairchild. I like Friedl the best out of that group. Any one of those three guys is playable to moderately playable. Friedel's had a good year. 7 home runs, 17 steals, 107 WRC plus. So playable parts really in all 4 corners here. Probably Justin Steele, Cubs bats, Reds bats, Ben Lively. Lively's really only a value dart throw, but I do think he is on that board. Chi Sox, Texas Rangers. We get the White Sox lineup in. As I referred to earlier, a lot of power obviously coming through with Andrew Heaney on the hill again for the Rangers. That has big impacts on right-handed power, as we can see through the heart of the White Sox projected lineup here. Luis Robert, 29 home runs, looking for number 30 tonight. 17.31 in the home run model. My overall home run pick for the day. Oh, I got to update this, though. No Jake Berger in the lineup anymore. It's a new version of the projected. Still not the confirmed new version of the projected. Lose Berger's power. That's obviously a downgrade. So we have, now we have Benintendi hitting 5th, which is an interesting twist. They'll probably go Andrew Vaughn. They might break it up with a lefty. I'd still prefer to see Oscar Colas in that spot if they did it. Benintendi's obviously a better table setter for Andrew Vaughn and Oscar Colas in terms of the power, but I think sneaking Colas in as the lefty bat behind the premium righty bats and ahead of Vaughn is actually kind of an interesting construction if they wanted to go that way and give the premium rookie power hitter a shot. He's had 150 shots. He's got 1 home run on the season, a .050 ISO, 42 WRC plus. So what do I know? Maybe they're right. But he only costs 2,100, 2,200. I do think Oscar Colas is in play a little bit here, even against Heaney, even lefty, if he's in the lineup at all. Something just came through. I get more updates for this league that was canceled and moved to a different site via Yahoo because these idiots just keep making pickups because they want to take advantage of a league that's running but nobody's playing in it so that they can pad their Yahoo standings. So they keep making all these pickups like on a daily basis. I get like 30 notifications about it. It drives me bananas. But I don't want to turn off notifications because then I miss everything else. It's so annoying. Yeah. Let's see. Andrew Benintendi Oscar Colas may or may not be in the lineup. I would expect Benny to be in the lineup in some spot or other. We'll see where he ends up hitting. He's a playable part at 3,000, 2,800. Better hit tool, obviously. A run creator, but not really creating many runs. 12 stolen bases is not the greatest production from him. Tim Anderson, a down season, but he's up to a 60 WRC plus, maybe some little bit of pulse. Hit his first home run of the season the other day. Joel Moncada, decent bat for a cheap price at third base. Hasn't done a lot this season in 168 opportunities. Has been bad in recent seasons, but I still believe there's a decent bat in there. I've seen it. I've seen him produce in the right situation. So at cheap prices, I'm willing to go there, especially if he's hitting second. Ahead of this power core as well. These two bats are a must if you're stacking White Sox. Andrew Vaughn is pretty important if you're stacking White Sox. 13 home runs, 179 ISO, 105 WRC plus. Elvis Andrus is an afterthought and not that good. Sebi Zavala, kind of an afterthought, but maybe a little bit of sneaky pop. He's got 6 home runs and 171 plate appearances. Is a very cheap catcher. No Yasmani Grandal in this version of the lineup. Did Grandal get dealt, or are they just looking a different direction in this projected? Might be looking to deal him. Oh, the White Sox got Luis Patino in that trade. That's an interesting pickup. I'm just looking at Twitter real quick. See if there's anything interesting. Don't see anything. If you don't follow it, Super 70s Sports on Twitter is a pretty good follow. A lot of just like photos from back in the 70s and jokes. And today's they have a picture of Jake Taylor, Tom Berenger from Major League on the Guardians, or the Indians at the time. And the comment on it is Jake Taylor only cared about three things: getting drunk, getting laid, and winning baseball games. And that's what made him a great goddamn American. It's pretty good. Excellent. Excellent movie. One of the best baseball movies of all time, if not the best baseball movie of all time. Major League. Bull Durham is also in that conversation. I watched Rookie of the Year the other day while writing the baseball article. Not necessarily in the conversation, but a fun baseball movie. I'm sure many people in the chat grew up with that one. You guys are about 10 years younger than me, so you probably hit the sweet spot of when you were kids. I saw that as like, a teenager probably, somewhere around there. The kid from American Pie was in it, though, so I couldn't have been that old into my teens. So that must have been like right when you guys were kids. Maybe even before. All right. Got a little second wind here. 5:20, plenty of time. Oh, 8 men out's definitely in the conversation, Greg. I would consider that's almost less. I mean, it is obviously a baseball movie and it's a historical baseball movie, but it's also almost like it's set up like a con kind of a movie or like a heist kind of a movie, almost like the phases of those kind of movies where it's like get the gang together and then like executing it and montages and stuff. But yeah, classic movie, fantastic cast. Field of Dreams is in the conversation, and another one that's like it's all about baseball, but it's not necessarily about baseball, right? It's about like the behind the baseball, the fathers and sons of it all, and the magic and poetry and beauty of baseball, rather than being about like a specific baseball game. Yeah, 8 Men Out, not a comedy, but yeah, excellent movie. The Natural's another good one. There's a lot of good baseball movies. The Sandlot. Sandlot is in the conversation for best baseball movie, period, full stop. That is a great movie. What else? There's a bunch of like Little Big League, Mr. 3000 with Bernie Mac. Bunch of like also ran. Angels in the Outfield. A lot of also ran. Mr. Baseball with Tom Selleck. A lot of also rans. Mr. Baseball was on not too long ago. That one didn't age all that well. So Heaney, we're attacking the ridiculous home run rate, right? 4.34% this year so far. We just know he's a strikeout artist on the right day with a major home run problem. 4.52% home runs last year on 47.7% hard hits, 11% barrels in 72 and 2/3, 14 starts. Year before, more complete season, 23 starts, 129 and 2/3, 5.20% home runs on 9.4% barrels. Just a targetable pitcher for home runs. If you get him on the right day, though, especially for 6,600 on DK, you guys know where I'm going with this. There is tournament upside in going to Andrew Heaney. If I was building 150 lineups on DK, I would definitely have some of them. Building 150 lineups on FanDuel at 7,900, I would definitely have some of them. He projects out okay, and he's got a 10 strikeout ceiling. Or not even ceiling, he's upside with a beyond 10 strikeout ceiling on the right day. 23.6% strikeouts in this projected version of the White Sox lineup. That includes like a really shitty hitter like Elvis Andrus at 16.9%, just a non-threatening bat. Benny's their best at avoiding strikeouts at 14.2. Some of their best hitters like Lubob's at 29.2. If you can negate his power by striking him out 3 times, you're off and running as an Andrew Heaney. That takes away a bunch of the threat if he can get through Robert with the strikeouts a couple times. The Fan, that's another one. Poe DJ and Stoner. That's another one that's like baseball adjacent, though, right? That's like a stalker movie, a crazy neighbor, crazy boss, crazy whatever, boss from hell type of thing, neighbor from hell type of thing. That's that kind of movie, like Fan from Hell type of a movie, really, a stalker movie, more than it's like a specific about baseball movie, but definitely, yeah, baseball adjacent. Wesley Snipes doing his best Barry Bonds impression basically through that movie, playing for the Giants as like a dislike. Solid picks. Yes. Solid picks. Nailed it. Naked Gun. It's Enrico Palazzo. Such a good movie. If you haven't seen The Naked Gun, guys, I don't know what you're doing with your time. If you haven't seen The Naked Gun, you probably also haven't seen like Airplane, Hot Shots, the other Zaz movies, the Abrams Zucker Kentucky Fried Movie. Do yourself a favor. If you like comedy, if you like slapstick comedy, Airplane, Naked Gun, Hot Shots, Kentucky Fried Movie, just look up Zucker, Abrams, Zucker, and just watch their movies. Funny, foundational 70s into the 80s comedies, into the 90s with some of those slapstick comedies, and just like Airplane hasn't necessarily aged all that well, but there's so many classic jokes, and it's like just the pace. It's like 5 jokes per minute, so it's just like it's super high end. Like it's so good. I'm telling you, and I'm sure most of you guys here have seen it. I'm not talking to a bunch of 18-year-olds, so I'm sure most of you guys have. But if there's one person, if I can reach just one person who hasn't seen Airplane, it'll be worth it. But yeah, solid picks. Great call with the Naked Gun there. It's a long baseball scene too. They actually got Reggie Jackson to be in it and attempt to assassinate the Queen. Spoilers. O.J. Simpson was in it. Yep, that's how old the Naked Gun series is now, is that O.J. Simpson was in it, and it wasn't weird. He hadn't murdered anybody yet. Allegedly murdered anybody yet. Excuse me. He hadn't not murdered anybody yet, and then not gone out to catch the real killers yet. All right, the Texas Rangers, to get us back on track, very much in play against Jesse Schultens, who is not at all an option. 13.5% strikeout rate in 37 innings, 2 starts. I don't expect a full start from Schultens, but I don't expect him to be limited to just like a pure opener role here. So I think you just fire away with Rangers bats. We don't really need to overthink this one. Semien, Travis Jankowski's playable with a 309, 396, 394, a 126 WRC plus, and 15 stolen bases on the board this year. Obviously not Corey Seager in the second spot, but who is? He's a reasonable facsimile in terms of just replacing some of the skill set in terms of being able to get on base, being able to swipe a bag, and being able to correlate. He comes nowhere near replacing the power or everything else that Corey Seager does. Why have I gotten this Jake Berger alert like 7 times? Come on, DraftKings. You've already sent me that one. Nathaniel Lowe, underrated player, 4,100, 3,300, good first baseman, 287, 382, 453, creating runs 34% better than average, 12 home runs on the season. Not a massive source of power, but not priced like it, and a very good correlated scorer with a very good hit tool over time. Hits in the heart of the lineup, either 3rd or 5th every day. Adolis Garcia, Josh Young, major power assets, 5,500 and 4,600 on DK. Young and Lowe help pay for Garcia's price. This is a great little trio for $4,700 a piece. On FanDuel, it's a great little trio for $3,300 a piece. Just a good group of hitters to go to. Followed by Mitch Garver, power hitting catcher option with Jonah Heim out. He's getting the full-time spot. Big time power for Mitch Garver. Brad Miller, 2,500, 2,200. Interesting enough bat. Has been productive over time. A little bit of power. Can swipe a bag or two every now and again. And then Duran and Taveras, like I mentioned at the top of the show. It's them or it's Arcia and Harris from the bottom of the lineup in the last 2 spots. They're the best last 2 spots across baseball. Oh, Stephen Leibowitz, Monty Python and the Holy Grail and Life of Brian are a different kind of foundational. They are if you're a fan of like podcasts or comedy or anything like that, and you like listening to like comedians or like comic actors, writers, stuff like that talk about it, to a person, you will hear them say their biggest or one of their biggest influences or one of the first things they ever saw that got them into comedy. And these are people like around my age, was Monty Python. They are the roots of modern comedy. Like it goes no further than them. They are still to this day, SNL included, Mr. Show included, Kids in the Hall included, The State included, any other sketch group that comes to mind included. They're the best sketch group of all time, and it's not close. They are geniuses, and literally we're talking about Cambridge and Oxford educated geniuses. I mean, they are amazing. Those 2 movies are foundational for me, foundational for millions of people, and people who, you know, the top comics and people going in comedy. Like, they are amazing movies. Hilarious. Yeah, Flying Circus is great. Those 2 movies specifically. The other 2 movies, one's like kind of a clip compilation, but those 2 movies specifically. Holy Grail is more silly. Life of Brian is more, it's extremely silly and it's extremely, extremely funny, but it's also a little bit deeper. But they're both just amazing movies. That's History of the World, Phil. Mel Brooks' History of the World. Yet another awesome comedy. everything Mel Brooks from back then was also foundational for me, foundational for many, many people who do that professionally. Yeah, but very much. I come to you with these 15, 10 commandments. It's Moses coming down from the mountain. It's Mel Brooks as Moses. This is great. Greg Biancone says at Hollywood Bowl. Yeah, the Hollywood Bowl show was a big compilation of a lot of the best of Flying Circus, their sketch show. So it's a lot of their best ever sketches, like the pet store sketch and the Ministry of Silly Walks. And now for something completely different is the compilation sketch one. Yep, Meaning of Life does have moments. Mel Brooks starts at Young Frankenstein, says Stephen Leibowitz. Welcome to the Roto Scouts movie podcast, which is actually something that I kind of want to do. I've had a good idea for a movie podcast for a long, long time. It's not something I would execute under the Roto Scouts flag, but I do have an online server and a bunch of other URLs that I could do. The only thing I'm missing is like another 12 hours in my day where I could focus on doing that for a while. But yeah, I love talking movies. Anyway, let's get back on track. So the Rangers from top to bottom against Jesse Schultz, fire away as much as you want to. Spencer Strider and the Rangers both fall into that bucket as much or as little as you want. I consider the Dodgers in that same bucket as well today. And basically most of Coors Field. 5:30, we do need to pick up a little time. Keeping in mind that I do have to actually exit at 6. I mean, have to strong, but I'd like to. The Royals lineup is in. Let's try and grab this one in a hurry. I think Jose Quintana is interesting today. Capable enough pitcher. Over time in his good seasons, pitched into the high 20s for strikeouts. Has only made 2 starts this season to middling results. But going up against the Kansas City Royals, there's enough strikeout upside on the bone for him here, and just a low-end, low-scoring lineup that I believe in enough in this projection for Jose Quintana. 6,100, 8,200. I obviously like it a lot better as a value play as an SP2 on DK. That's just a very easy price to get to. Plug him in at SP2. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but it's a good enough projection and a realistic one. It's a guy who's been a good pitcher over time. 20.2% strikeouts, but a very clean ERA, clean xFIP, and no real damage in terms of home runs whatsoever. No real premium contact in his 165 and 2/3 and 32 starts last year. 28.6% strikeout rate in 63 innings and 10 starts the year before that. Was walking way more hitters, gave up some more premium contact that year. So kind of a funky year that year. But he's had other good years of decent strikeout rates in the mid-20s. So I do believe in Quintana and around this kind of level of output with a ceiling for a little bit more. Has the potential to pitch probably 6 innings and maybe chase the win and the quality start bonuses. So definitely upside, more so on DK, a little bit thinner on FanDuel, but the price is still okay on FanDuel at 82. Zach Greinke on the other side, this is another spot. I think you can take as much or as little against the field as you want of Mets bats going up against Zach Greinke. 15.5% strikeout rate, 4.69% hard hit home run rate, 5.49 ERA, 4.48 xFIP. All of that is hyper targetable. The only thing he's doing well is not walking anybody. He doesn't get himself in trouble, so he doesn't create opportunities. But the Mets are good enough that they can create opportunities against Zach Greinke. They've got Pete Alonso in the heart of the lineup. They've got Francisco Lindor. They may or may not have Tommy Pham, depending on whether they trade him in the next half hour or so. I haven't seen him get dealt yet, but he was on the block and makes a lot of sense for them to move out of town. Brendan Nimmo's not going anywhere. Terrific leadoff hitter, 15 home runs, 431 slug, 175 ISO, 21% better than average creating runs, 47.5% hard hits. So there's probably even a little bit more power lurking behind the 15 home runs that he's already hit, but just an excellent option for correlation and individual contributions. 21 homers, 17 steals for Lindor. I don't care about the low-end triple slash. Same for Pete, 30 home runs for him. Missed some time, struggled after he came back, but 288 ISO. He's got his power stroke back, 14.5% barrels on the season. No worries about Pete Alonso. You take as many shares as you can get at 14.12 in the home run model, and he's really cheap at 4,800 for his talents on the DK slate. Jeff McNeil, slap hitter, getting unlucky this season, underperforming this season, any given slate upside. Vogelback, any given slate power upside, but hasn't done it very regularly this season. Lefty power back going up against Zach Greinke here, though. DJ Stewart, Brett Beatty, playable parts down bottom, and then Francisco Alvarez, particularly if Pham doesn't play and he climbs in the lineup for a little bit of righty power. I really like the spot for Francisco Alvarez and all his pop. So the Mets, top to bottom, whatever form they take, are basically playable end to end against Zach Greinke. There's a lot of good value pricing. There's a lot of underpriced stars like Pete Alonso in the heart of the lineup here. He's 4,200 full freight on FanDuel, but a dramatic discount on DK, by the way. So definitely good reasons to go to the Mets. On the Royals side of things, even in the matchup against Quintana, they could get to him for sure. There's enough talent at the top of the lineup, but it's really like a 4-man lineup for me. Maybe you work in some Matt Duffy against the lefty, a capable hit tool for 2,000 for 2,100, but it's not a very good lineup. Freddie Fermin, 2,800 at catcher, has been productive enough that you play him if you're going to Royals on DK. 2,800, cheap enough at catcher. Then we're working, but you have to offset Sal, so you don't want to actually do that now that I'm thinking it through, obviously. So he's a decision point where if you build a bunch of Royal stacks, then I guess you would work him in. But yeah, we're not replacing Sal Perez as like one of 2 valuable bats in this lineup too many times with Freddie Fermin. So forget that. MJ Melendez underperforming his ridiculously good contact profile. Still only 8 home runs, a 135 ISO, despite 11.6% barrels, 52.2% hard hits. I said about month and a half, 2 months ago, that either this or this will normalize, and neither one of them has. He's still hitting the ball really hard and really well when he hits it, and resulting in nothing. No output for quality whatsoever. So it's a weird season for MJ Melendez, a player I do believe has actual left-handed power in the long term. Bobby Witt's obviously a star. 5,300, 3,400. You can plug and play him at shortstop in any given slate, and most definitely against Jose Quintana. So Mets top to bottom, Jose Quintana for value. Only a couple darts, maybe a hedge position with Royals if you get overweight to Quintana. Try and hit the gas pedal here. Gav Williams. Interesting part. He projects pretty well against the Astros here. He's been very good. He's one of the top pitching prospects in all of baseball, if you haven't heard us talk about him before. I do think there's upside for him. I don't love the matchup against the Astros. Kind of a relatively low strikeout bunch. There's a lot of premium power in this lineup, but they don't have Jordan Alvarez in the lineup today, which I'm just noticing. So that's a major boon to Gavin Williams' upside. So a little bit of a bump to Gav. I'm going to get a little bit more enthusiastic about this spot now. Only a 19.7% strikeout rate, but pitching to a 3.35 ERA, but a 5.01 xFIP in 37 2/3. Very small sample. Has been pretty good at limiting premium contact, 4.6% barrels, 34% hard hits, 2.55 for home runs on 87 miles an hour of exit velo. Without Alvarez in the lineup, that's an interesting spot now. He only cost 6,700 on the DK slate, 7,800 on FanDuel. He has not found his strikeout form yet in the show, but he's a 30% strikeout guy through his minor league career. And like I said, one of the best prospects in all of baseball on the mound. Blazing fastball, excellent breaking ball, 2 developing pitches, his changeup and something else. But 2 excellent plus MLB caliber pitches right now. So he has upside for those prices on both sites. You obviously like it better as an SP2 on DK, like a lot of these plays. On the other side, for 11-1 for 10,000, Framber Valdez, one of my top pitchers of the day. He projects out like it, close to but not in that very, very top group of pitchers, but he's a big part of that next group down that was all packed to between 30 and 35 points. So he's right near the top of that. Pitching really well on the whole this season, 26% strikeouts. The launch angle's up a little bit, and it's weird to say because it's only 4 degrees, but that is up from negative launch angles the last 2 seasons for him. Home runs are up consequently slightly to 2.13% home runs, but that's still an excellent home run rate, an excellent ability to keep the ball on the ground, and he's back to 4-month strikeouts, a 3.29 ERA, a 3.14 xFIP, typically worked very deep into ball games, 126 innings and 20 starts, chases wins, chases quality starts, non-threatening lineup on the other side. Guardians have Stephen Kwan, Tyler Freeman, Jose Ramirez, Josh Naylor, Andres Jimenez in the lineup today. Somebody else is missing too. Well, David Fry, Oscar Gonzalez, Gabriel Arias, and Miles Straw. It's a really weak bottom 4. It's a pretty weak top 2. You're really worried about 3 hitters in this lineup. It's a really limited stack to go to. They're very cheap, but a lot of these cheap guys are like non-entities. Like Gabriel Arias does have premium power upside. 4 home runs in 181 plate appearances, 42.6% hard hits. But as we've talked about each of the last few days while he's been in the lineup so cheap, he just is unreliable, like crazy unreliable for actually making contact, which is the big concern with him. 31.5% strikeout rate. So wildly unreliable, surrounded by unreliable Oscar Gonzalez, who does have a little bit of pop for cheap prices. Miles Straw, who's a defender. David Fry, mediocre season, 284, 338, 486, 203. I saw, all right, maybe a little better than I thought over 80 plate appearances, but a short season, let's say that much. Catcher eligible on DK does make him a little bit interesting, 2,500 over there. Limited lineup, especially you have to make a decision between Naylor and Bell on DK too. So you're already losing one of the 3 premium bats in the lineup. Guardians are very low priority here with Framber's talents meeting their lack of output this season with a weak version of this lineup. I don't really see much need to go to Guardians. A little bit of a bump to Framber. So a little bump to Gav, a little bump to Framber. Definitely would play the Astros against Gav even without Alvarez in the lineup. Just go to Altuve, Tucker, and Bregman as your priorities. My next man in would be Chas McCormick with his great season in an ongoing sense. Pena's lower priority, but it's a good spot in the batting order, and he's cheap at shortstop. So I think you do work him in if you're building an abundance of Astros stacks. You definitely want him in there. Jainer Diaz, Martin Maldonado, Jake Myers, kind of mix and match options. 2 catchers in the lineup. Jose Abreu, underperforming overall, but up to an 81 WRC+. So he's definitely been coming on over the last 8 weeks. Steve Buchanan gives his top parlay bet on DraftKings Sportsbook. Can we not do pop-up announcements at the trade deadline about anything other than trades? 20 minutes to go before the deadline. I'll pop back into the chat. I've been looking in the other window. Hopefully, let's see what's gone on. Stephen Leibowitz said hit tool, do a shot. Is that a thing? I know I say hit tool quite a bit, but it's the best way to describe these things. These specific tools that these players have, specific attributes. Mel Brooks Kid or whatever, Max Brooks is doing good work with his World War Z books and graphic novel. Yeah, I have the World. I didn't know it was books plural. I read the first one like around when the movie came out. But yeah, I like Max. He did something else along the way too. I forget what, but he did something else. Was like, oh cool, it was Max Brooks popped up. Now you guys have me Googling Max Brooks with 19 minutes before I gotta go. What was the other thing that he did where I was like, oh, that might be interesting? Well, I'm not seeing it immediately, so forget it. It doesn't matter. Hey, you know what was a big piece of shit? That new Transformers movie. That was it's free on Paramount now. My buddy Charlie's a big Transformers fan going way back to when he was a kid. And we talked about maybe going to see it knowing that it would be shitty, and we didn't make it out to it in the 15 minutes that it was in movie theaters. So I watched it the other day on Paramount for free just so I could chat about it with him when he comes by this week. I know he had watched it and didn't like it either, but man, even among the Transformers movies, that was a big swing and a miss. I don't know what just popped that into my head. Something in Max Brooks' Wikipedia page made that trigger into my brain, but I didn't consciously register what it was. But yeah, you can skip that one. Even if you're a big Transformers fan, or maybe especially if you're a big Transformers fan, maybe don't watch that one. So yeah, no love for the Guardians. Definite value on Gav Williams. Definite interest in Framber Valdez, despite a fairly high price on DK. I like him at that price because it'll keep ownership off of him. 10,000 I think is a little bit discounted on the FanDuel slate for the opportunity for Framber today. And then some stacks of Astros, but not a major priority for me with no Jordan in the lineup. Coors Field, we can skip over the pitching. Do not roster either one of these pitchers. Enough said. Padres, do we have the lineups? We do have the Pods lineup. We do not have the Rocks lineup. Padres lineup, as expected, opens with Ha-Seong Kim. Excellent option in the leadoff role here. Correlates along with all the other players and having a career year of his own. 14 home runs, 21 steals, 130%. 30% better than average creating runs on the season. 169 ISO is pretty solid for a player of his makeup. Second base on DK for 4,700. 3,600 for second base, third base, and shortstop makes him even more valuable on the FanDuel slate. It's a bit of a premium to be paying for Ha-Seong Kim, but you'll love the lineup spot ahead of the power core, ahead of the star quartet of players there, and you'll love that it's at Coors Field, so it's just easy enough to pay the price. It's just weird seeing him $100 more than Xander Bogaerts, but he's arguably outperformed Bogaerts on the season, or maybe not even arguably. It's pretty clear from the statistics. Tatis is a superstar. Juan Soto is a superstar. By the way, look at these home run marks going up against Peter Lambert here. I feel like Peter Lambert's going to be in for a pretty short day. I know he's got an okay strikeout rate. He's not pitched completely terribly, but he's got a 44.8% hard hit, 10.4% barrels, 4.64% home runs going up against these guys in Coors Fields. It's not going to be pretty. 27.99 for Tatis in the home run model, one of the higher marks of the entire season. I left it alone. I figure it's totally realistic in this spot. 216 ISO, 18 homers. It's weird that Soto falls below him at 19.7, but that's still an outrageously high number. 20 home runs for him. Manny at 18.44 in the home run model, also nearly doubling up the magic number. 20 home runs on the year for him. 2.34 for Xander Bogaerts in the home run model, puts him above the magic number. 11 homers on the season for him. We've also got Luis Camposano and Gary Sanchez in the lineup. Both are catchers on both sites. 3,300, 3,900, 3,100, 3,400 across sites. Both catchers are power hitters. If they make contact, either one of them could hit a home run today. Tons and tons of power for the Padres. I expect they'll be very popular. There's a ton of rain in the area again, but they waited 2.5 hours to start this game at 11 p.m. Eastern last night. I suspect they're willing to wait again today. I can't imagine they would do it yesterday and then not do it today. So unless they get that storm that pops up and just sits on top of the stadium, I think we're playing it. But make sure to check the professionals' reports, the professional meteorologist reports, because I haven't updated it recently. I could be wildly, wildly off. EB says that shit was terrible. I assume he's talking about the Transformers special, not the Max Brooks series on the All Black Marine platoon from New York that was highly decorated during World War I, which sounds pretty awesome. I got to check that out. That wasn't what I was thinking of. I didn't spot what I was thinking of, but there was something fairly recently that I was like, oh, that'll be cool to check out. It might have just been that I noted that there was a World War Z sequel and subsequently forgot. Anyway, the Rockies, kind of like yesterday, fairly interesting here. I assume they'll be the lower owned side of the equation here. Profar's not that interesting in the leadoff spot, but Tovar's okay as a two-hitter. Ryan McMahon with all of his powers definitely interesting for 4,500, 3,800 multi-position on FanDuel. 17 homers, 212 on ISO on the season to lead this team. Elias Diaz, playable part. Hopefully Nolan Jones is back in the lineup. He was a little bit dinged up, didn't play yesterday. That was a major drop-off in the lineup yesterday, if you remember from the show when we found out he wasn't in the lineup. I dinged this team quite a bit. But 4,300, 3,300 for him if he plays. Lefty, 9 home runs on the season. Definitely power upside for days. Ahead of Michael Toglia and Eleuders Montero, the two guys we talked about a lot yesterday. Very, very cheap prices. Toglia hit 32 home runs across 2 levels of the minors and the majors last year. Montero had, I think, 21 in the same stretch. I think all of his were AAA and majors last year. But 2 significant prospects, significant power bats hiding late in the lineup for very cheap prices in a Coors Field game going up against Pedro Avila. A non-entity of a pitcher who had a... Where's the article? Did I click away from the article? Damn it. Avila had just stupidly bad numbers in AAA this season. So just noting that it's Coors Field with that guy on the hill just makes me interested in the Rockies stack. 6.48 xFIP and an 8.57 ERA with a 17.8% strikeout rate in 50 some odd innings as a 26-year-old working at AAA. That's a really bad pitcher, you guys. That is somebody that you can target. He's stretched out, so he's supposed to be making a full traditional start here. I don't know that he lasts very long. I think you can definitely take some swings with some very cheap Rockies bats here. Good way to get to Coors and stay differentiated from the public and get to Coors at very, very cheap prices up and down the lineup. And a lot of the hitters that we like are these guys right down here. By the way, Brenton Doyle and Harold Castro kind of playable from the bottom if you just needed to go all out bottom, or if they were moved up to the top of the lineup, let's say. Like Harold Castro, I can make an argument for hitting him second or even leadoff. Not that he's got a good on base, but he's got a much better hit tool. So there's good reason to believe that he would be a better option up there. Brenton Doyle's provided some counting stats in very small doses this season. So playable parts depending on what they confirm in the final version of the lineup. 3 games to go. I didn't skip any games, right? Let me know in the chat if I skipped any games. I'll pop back in there momentarily. Let's see if we got either of these lineups. We do not. No, we had that one. All right. Rotten Tomatoes has Facing Nolan as the #1 baseball movie of all time. Interesting. It's an interesting choice. I haven't seen it. It's on Netflix, right? I remember seeing it up on one of the streamers, but I didn't check it out. But I'll have to watch it. For anybody playing in that where that Phillies game is relevant, JT Realmuto scratched with a hand issue. All quiet around the trade deadline right now. I haven't seen anything pop up in the last little bit. 3 games, 10 or 11 minutes. Tommy Pham to the D-backs. Dorian Ure breaking the news in the chat. All right, Dorian. Haven't seen it yet, but that's a good pickup for the D-backs. And that will change the confirmed version of the Mets lineup that we looked at earlier. He was hitting second. We talked about that briefly, or that was still the projected version. Let's see if they confirmed anything. How did they go? There they are. So he was hitting second, so it'll be an interesting configuration. Maybe we get the Francisco Alvarez sneaking up to that second spot like we've seen him a couple of times this season. That would be a very interesting spot for that hitter. We'll probably do something dumb like get Jeff McNeil there or get Lindor hitting second and McNeil third or some dumbass move like that. Interesting trade, though. That's I was expecting Pham to move. There was no reason for the Mets to keep him. Good acquisition for the D-backs. That's a better option for them than running with like Jake McCarthy, Alec Thomas in the outfield every day. I would imagine he'll replace Thomas rather than McCarthy. Good pickup, though. All right, Bryce Miller, Brian Bayo. Tough spot for Bryce Miller. I think you guys know that I really believe in the pitcher. I think he's going to be a pretty good pitcher over time. He's pitching to a 1 whip in 14 starts and 75 innings as a rookie, 5.1% walk rate. Just pitches exactly on form like the Logan Gilberts and so on of the world, that like the style that this team enforces in these young pitchers is to really focus on limiting walks, pitch to mid-range strikeouts if you can, but walks are really, really important to this organization. And all of their good starters, their good young starters, have very low walk rates. He fits into that profile perfectly. 3.96 ERA, 4.19 xFIP, has given up some barrels, has given up some premium contact for sure, 3.7% home runs, couple clunky starts in there, couple very good dazzling type starts. 92-91 is the issue. The pricing is the concern here. He's not exactly value tier priced. He's more like a pay up to be different dart throw, which isn't necessarily ideal for our purposes. Like, I like my dart throws to provide me access to a bunch of good bats that I can't otherwise get to with a $6,000 DraftKings guy, a $7,000, $8,000 FanDuel guy. Maybe a Brian Bayo would be a dart throw example on the other side of this game at 85 on FanDuel, although that's even a little high. But I like it. I like it to get bats when I get my value guys. So I don't know how much Bryce Miller I would get to naturally in this spot. The Red Sox are a deadly good lineup when they're on, and they've been on lately. Top end of the lineup, you can see all the green dots up there. All those guys project really well. Tristan Casas is already underway with the excellent second half, up to 16 homers, a 227 ISO, a 14.9% barrel rate with a 47.1% hard hit. Excellent left-handed power bat for still very cheap. 3,200 on DK. 34 on FanDuel has climbed. They've got him in around the right spot, but still very, very cheap for Casas on the DK slate. Jarren Duran's been excellent in the leadoff role. He's still really cheap on DK at 4,000. 3,100 is cheap for him on FanDuel. Significantly higher than his already good 133 WRC plus in the leadoff role. I said it on yesterday's show. It's I think in the 160s somewhere. Significantly higher. Excellent hitter, good for steals, mid-range pop. Yes, Masataka Yoshida, 304, 366, 481, creating runs 30% better than average. Excellent rookie season for him. Adam Duvall still in this version of the projected lineup. He was also on the trade block, might not be in the lineup. If he plays, you can play him. Devers is obviously a star, a little underpriced for the perception of underperformance this season. 5,000, 3,600, 25 homers, 253 ISO, creating runs 24% better than average in the heart of that lineup. Take him because he's cheap. It's easy to do. Verdugo down lineup a little bit, 3,900, 3,000. A little bit of a slump, but definitely a playable lefty bat late in the lineup. And then Reyes, Connor Wong, and Yu Chang are all mix and match playable type parts for in the 2,000s that help pay for some of the somewhat higher price guys over here. Bayo, I think, is an okay option. He's not cheap enough at 8,900 on DK, 85 on FanDuel. He should be a little bit less expensive. The Mariners do push strikeouts in the other direction, though, which would be the interesting thing here. If he can limit home runs and find a few additional strikeouts, he's got a little bit of upside at that price. 3.66 ERA on the season, 4.03 xFIP, inducing a good 11.2% swinging strike rate, which should play well against this team. 20.3% strikeouts overall, doesn't really get himself in trouble. Is okay in theory anyway at keeping the ball down. The low home run marks here are influenced a little bit by the 11 starts from last year in which he had a 5.4% barrel rate, 5.3 degree average launch angle, and a 0.37% home run rate. Some of that is happenstance in only 11 starts, 57 and a third innings. The home run rate would have probably normalized over time, kind of like what we've seen with like Sonny Gray's allowed a couple more home runs in recent starts after allowing like 0 or 1 over his first like 15 or whatever it was. So similar output to that. It just didn't get a chance to normalize because he didn't pitch all that much. So there's still a little bit of that in here. He's obviously been worse at it this year. Still a good launch angle on average though. Still good at keeping the ball down. Just a few more mistakes in 17 starts, 96 innings. Josh Naylor scratched from the Guardians lineup. It says side, so it seems like it's an injury, not a trade. So I think Bayo is both targetable with Mariners bats, but maybe somewhat playable, but he's a little too pricey. So he falls into just that awkward fit kind of a tier. I think I prefer Miller as the pay up spot, even though he's facing the more challenging lineup. I just believe in his talent a little bit more and he projects out a little bit better. Not that this 3-point difference in the projection in the FanDuel scale is worth $600. Really, it's they're both too pricey situation. So a little bit yes to bats on both sides. If you're going to Mariners bats, JP Crawford's a good option for correlated scoring in the leadoff spot, and then you just play your way through the power core with Julio Rodriguez, Eugenio Suarez, Cal Raleigh. If he's still on the team, because he's also on the trade block, Teoscar Hernandez is a good option. 3,400, 3,000 is too cheap for that bat. 16 home runs this season, only a 168 ISO, only a 93 WRC plus. Last year, 129 WRC plus, 25 homers, 224 ISO. Significant power bat. Underperforming a little bit, but very, very cheap. Mike Ford overperforming, 11 home runs and 139 plate appearances, also very cheap at first base. Ty France underperforming, his price is way down. At this point, it's a debate between which of these two you would want. If you're building a bunch of Mariner stacks, just mix and match your way through. France has a much, much better hit tool. Ford hits for a little bit more power. If you could combine the two of them, you might have a pretty good player. Cade Marlowe. We've talked about his double-digit home runs and double-digit steals in a few minor league seasons of note recently. 2,700, 2,400 cheap. Nobody's going to go to him. I think if you're building a few Mariner stacks, you would include him for 2,700, 2,400 across sites. 1 home run, 2 steals, and 26 plate appearances in the show so far. So light yes to the two pitchers, with Miller slightly preferred. More enthusiastic yes to the two hitting situations, probably with the Red Sox a little bit preferred, but the Mariners close on their heels. 2 games to go. Not going to make 6 o'clock, but that's okay. Zach Gallen on the bump for the Diamondbacks. Premium pitcher, one of the top 2 projected on the day. 10-5, 10-6 going up against the San Francisco Giants. I think it's totally worth it. Hey, did Alex Cobb scratch again? Or are they leaving him in? Hopefully they're leaving him in. I think they just moved him today to pitch, just take the matchup against the much better pitcher and give him a shot to win this game. 8,200, 9,200 for Cobb. Totally worth it. Everything we said about him yesterday still true today. Excellent at limiting launch angle. Excellent at limiting home runs. Strikes out a little bit better than 1 in 5. Good pitcher overall. 2.97 ERA. 3.31 xFIP. Underpriced on the DK slate. That's a very good price for Alex Cobb on DK at 8,200. Even facing the low strikeout Diamondbacks, there are a lot of good reasons to go to Alex Cobb in this spot at that price. Arguably, 92 is a fair price. Let's say that. The matchup makes it a little bit more uncomfortable on the FanDuel slate. I can't imagine he's going to be popular on FanDuel. I just saw from one of my buddies, Jack Flaherty to the Orioles. That'd be a major acquisition for them if they can get him healthy. No word on the return yet. Not sure if that's in the chat. Apologies if I scoop somebody in the chat without giving them credit. That one was a text from my buddy Lou. Andrew Jennison says, release the CSVs. Keep your eye out around football season. We might have something. Would I lock Strider on FanDuel, or is it worth paying down? It's definitely worth paying down if you're building 150 lineups, solid picks. If you're building 3 and you just wanted to go with 3 shares of Strider, sure, you can do that. But there's a ton of valuable spots, ton of guys at cheap prices that can help you build stacks you can't otherwise get to. Like Carlos Rodon projects not the same, but similarly at the top of the board for several thousand less, with not the same, but similar strikeout upside. So I do think there are many, many options on this slate. I would not tell you you're absolutely making a mistake by playing a lot of Spencer Strider, though. So going up against Zach Gallen, limited interest in the Giants. Some of the lefties maybe, like Lamont Wade, who hasn't hit any home runs in going on like 2 months now, but still gets on base, still creates runs, although those numbers have diminished a little bit. The Yankees get Kenyon Middleton, whoever the hell that is. For who? White Sox relief pitcher. Not a name I knew. Dynamite acquisition. I imagine he's good, but why add a relief pitcher to the best bullpen in baseball? Rodon, Chuck Deuces says Rodon is scary as fuck for rostering and for fading. Yeah, I agree with you. 1.7% ownership on FanDuel for Cobb. Yeah, that's a good spot. It's easy. Roster 5-8%, something like that. You're well ahead of the curve. It's not that many lineups, so if it doesn't work out, it doesn't really cost you. I think he's worth playing in that kind of a context, if not a little bit more. So the Giants are moderately playable. Conforto and Peterson are appealing lefty power bats. Blake Sable for a cheap catcher option on the DK slate. J.D. Davis has been better against righties than he has against lefties this season. Good player overall, but there are no stars in this lineup. There's just a lineup full of okay to good players, and they're a competitive baseball team on a daily basis. Good pricing, easy to get to up and down the lineup. Decent low power core around Peterson, Sable, J.D. Davis, and Michael Conforto, but definitely focus on some of those lefties if you're attacking Zach Gallen, which doesn't seem necessary. 9.1% barrels, 44.4% hard hits, 91.2 miles an hour of exit velo should be targetable, but it's only been 2.56% home runs. He's managed it pretty well. Good strikeout option, 26.2%, 5.1% walk, so he doesn't give anything away. 3.55 exit fit with a 3.36 ERA. That's pretty damn good pitcher overall. So limited interest in the Giants, also limited interest in the Diamondbacks. A little bit more interest in them just given the hit tools, the on-base skills, and some of the power, despite Cobb, not really giving up many home runs. But it's very limited. Geraldo Perdomo is a good on-base option to correlate with Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll, Christian Walker, Lourdes Gurriel in lineups. Then you get the kind of weaker back end with Jake McCarthy. Limited hit tool, but good speed if he manages to get on. Emmanuel Rivera, good skills with the bat in his hands, hitting for average. No shot. 103 WRC plus on the season, only 4 home runs. Kind of a limited skill set for Rivera. Alec Thomas kind of flawed. Carson Kelly very flawed, but a catcher bat for extremely cheap, but a better catcher than he is a hitter at this point. So I think you go to both pitchers and limited doses of both stacks. Low priority stacks on both sides. Good value options though. Like if you need to offset pricing with decent hitters, those are 2 good sources of cheap, decent hitters. It's just a bad spot. Lance Lynn, nearly the same ownership as Strider at 25% on FanDuel. Yeah, I do think that's a highly, highly justifiable play, though. You're looking at it right here. 94 hundo on FanDuel. He projects out as one of the top options on the board for me. I think Lance Lynn is a goddamn bargain at 7,900 on the DK slate. That's competitive with the value of the Rodon play on FanDuel in my mind. Lance Lynn, I know he's had his bumps this season. He's got a 6.47 ERA. If we cared about ERA, we'd be concerned. His 4.02 xFIP is perfectly fine, perfectly playable along the lines of who Lance Lynn is. 10.9% barrels, 40.1% hard hits, and 5.23% home runs, on the other hand, not nearly who Lance Lynn is over time. The good news is he's facing the A's today. Not a lot of threats in that lineup. Plenty of strikeouts, 25% strikeout rate for this projected version of the lineup. If we drop Tony Kemp, that becomes 27% for most of their actually talented major league hitters. Tony Kemp, 3 home runs, 12 steals, 77 WRC plus, gets on base at a 300 clip, so let's lead him off. Zach Geloff, I do believe in a little bit of power from the rookie, 4,100, 3,500, 3 homers and 60 plate appearances, a 10.21 to lead the team in the model. Maybe you go to some of the lefties if you're looking at the real lefties, not the Tony Kemp lefties, but like Seth Brown, Cody Thomas, Tyler Soderstrom. That's a good little trio. You can work J.J. Bleday into that group. Decent amount of left-handed power, very, very low prices for all those guys going up against the home run flaws that Lance Lynn has had. I do think it's worth a handful of shares around those lefty power bats, plus Zach Geloff. That's really the core. It's 2 through 6. Langoliers as a bolt-on if you wanted to go away from Soderstrom for some reason. Maybe sneaky catcher power on DK. Diaz and Allen are non-entities at the bottom of the lineup. Tony Kemp's a non-entity at the top. So it's really, if it's this version of the lineup, it's 2 through 6. Austin Hedges to Texas. Interesting pickup for them. Blockbuster. Dodgers bats. They obviously, I guess, maybe that means a little bit of concern around Jonah Heim getting back. Can I discuss pinch hitter issues when we get to LA? Going up against Ken Waldichuk. They've got, we have the confirmed version of this lineup, don't we? Let me see who's in it, and then we'll talk. So with Muncy in the lineup, I don't worry. He's in the lineup against the lefty, and he's capable against lefties. 27 home runs overall. I think we get him the full game because if they go to a bullpen arm, it's going to be a righty, and his situation would improve in that spot. James Outman also in the lineup, so they went with at least one of the lefty power hitters, even with the lefty starter. That's how little they think of Kenny Waldichuk here. Once we get into a situation where they start bringing in righties, am I concerned around them pinch hitting for like Mookie Betts, Will Smith, the Med Rosario, Freddie Freeman types? No. Like maybe Chris Taylor comes out for like a Jason Hayward or somebody like that in the right situation late in the lineup. I just think we have so much acumen, and I haven't really been keeping a close eye on Dodgers pinch hitting situations. But I think with this construction that they're rolling out, like I'm pretty sure we're okay. If you got specific concerns, mention it in the chat and I can think about it. But I think maybe you've got like a little bit of like Chris Taylor, or maybe it happens to like Enrique Hernandez or Miguel Rojas. Depends on the situation. But that would be more like late lineup, late game close situation, or they're already blowing out the team on the other side and they just give one of these guys a blow. Maybe you get that situation. But I think we've got enough premium bats and enough premium opportunities here that I'm not really going to sweat it. They're going to be really highly owned, as is their pitcher. But I think it's a very, very playable spot. Waldichuk is super targetable. Overall 4.01% home run rate, 21.1% strikeout rate, 6.38 ERA, and a 5.24 xFIP. 21.1% strikeouts is okay, but he's been better in the bulk relief role than he has as a full-time starter. Throwing him to the Wolves here as a full-time start. 5,462. I see no reason to go to Ken Waldichuk in this spot. I think it's just dead against the Dodgers here. So I have a lot of interest in the Dodgers. I'd be stacking a lot of them. Chris Taylor's a big part of the plan there. 3,000, 2,800. He's got 12 home runs on the season, a 228 ISO. Kind of just sneaky power. People don't really think of Chris Taylor in terms of power, but he's been barreling the ball quite a bit this season, has a little bit of pop. Triple position eligible on FanDuel makes this a flexible, dynamic lineup when you've got Enrique Hernandez, Miguel Rojas, who has been really bad all season, and arguably, actually, so has Enrique Hernandez. 61 WRC plus, played his way out of Boston. But Mookie Betts also triple position eligible on FanDuel, double position on DK. There's just so much flexibility around this lineup that even with some high prices here, and you get a good price offset with Ahmed Rosario hitting cleanup for $38.29 at shortstop, with not blocking really a premium position. So just a lot of flexibility, a lot of ability to build in cheap, easy bats, easy connections to the star power here in the lineup. I think you can get creative enough with this team too if you're making just different decisions around like where you play guys, how you utilize guys in combination with one another with this team. I think there's a lot of different directions that you can go with this Dodgers lineup. So I definitely would have some. I would have quite a bit if I was building out 150 lineups. I think they're going to be in my one lineup, although no JD Martinez does suck. I was hoping he would be in there, but I can sneak in another cheapo bat, or I've got plenty of options to go to. I think Taylor's already in there, but I might just slide Outman into that lineup. Like Outman, I'm not gonna sweat the lefty of the situation. Waldichuk might be out of the game by the first time they reach Outman in the 7th spot. Yep, that's a big news break, but that's not about baseball, and it's not something we want to be talking about on the internet with a mixed bag of beliefs in the chat. But something big just broke. So yeah, that's the up and down of the slate, gang. With me having to get out of here at 6:07, let's do a quick rundown on the pitching board. Still get to the game, not necessarily on time, but we'll be in by like the second inning if we fly out of here. So like I was saying, Strider, if you wanted to lock him for 11K on the FanDuel slate, you're getting into a very limited pool of what he stacks with. That's the other concern. That's why you do like to work with some of these price offsets, like a Carlos Rodon, a handful of points behind, but obviously making it up, 3,500 or so less. That's just a major advantage because it not only is a very good pitcher, it also just unlocks the ability to everybody who rosters Spencer Strider is going to be locked into rostering him with like Brewers and Rockies and like, mediocre team, bad team, cheap prices affords that, right? So everybody that rosters Strider, all those lineups are going down a very specific alley. So it becomes a little bit difficult to just say, hey, I'm going to lock him, because then you're also locking a lot of those lineups and excluding a lot of the Dodgers, the Braves, the Padres, the Mets, Although the Mets have enough value, you might be able to squeak them in. But you exclude yourself from being able to get to a lot of those combinations if you do that. So it's a very specific play that needs a lot of thought, especially with Zach Gallen for a little bit less, projected right next to him. Lance Lynn for a lot less, projected right next to them. It's 7 points down in FanDuel projections, but that amounts to 2 strikeouts. Rodon, a great option. Eflin against Rodon, a good option, but he's a little bit pricey. He'll be under-owned for his upside compared to all these guys. So I think that's an interesting spot for tournaments. A little bit less faith in it, maybe a little bit of a high price. Framber Valdez, I think you could easily just say Framber's the top option going up against the Guardians here. I would argue with you because Strider's the top option because of his outrageous strikeout upside, but Framber's really good. Framber's got plenty of potential for innings, for clean innings, for strikeouts in that matchup. Justin Steele against Cincinnati, tons of value at these prices. Lopez, arguably a little bit high priced on both sites, but obviously projects well. I mean, look at how deep this board is, just to reiterate what we started the show with. All the way down to a playable Ben Lively on the other side of that Cincinnati-Chicago game. For 76-72, that projection is playable enough. He's believable enough against that Cubs team. Everybody down here I don't really need anything of. Everybody up here I would have at least a little bit of. Maybe a couple of them fall by the wayside because there's only so many shares to go around. But Michaelis with a little bit of strikeout upside against the Minnesota Twins for 74-69, I'm interested. Quintana for 82-61, I'm interested. More so for all these guys, by the way, on DK. This is a great group of value pitchers right here on DraftKings. It would take a lot of work if you let's take Lance Lynn off the board, or we'll call him an SP1. Like if you wanted to combine one of these highlighted guys right now here, one of these guys with Lance Lynn on the DK slate for a few shares of just like cheap SP1 and good SP2 for a very cheap price, you're buying your way into some interesting combinations that other people aren't going to be rostering. So I think even that has value. But let's say we take Lynn out of the equation and just look at like these options in conjunction with these high price guys. I can't be convinced, or it would take a lot to convince me that one of these guys isn't going to be the key to success on DraftKings tonight, given all these low prices for these pitchers in these matchups. One of these guys is going to connect tonight. One of these guys is going to have a lot of value on DK, probably more than one. So I think it makes a ton of sense to include all these guys in your pool. You want to be building with all of these guys. Heaney's got all kinds of warts, but he's definitely got strikeout acumen, definitely got upside at 66. Michaelis has upside at 69. Quintana has major upside at 61 if he can give us 5-6 innings. Only 5 on DK is fine. Josie Gray has upside. Oviedo against that terribly Detroit team has upside for 62. He's not a great pitcher. He could go bust completely, but he's got upside. Gavin Williams is one of the top pitching prospects in a bad matchup, but only costs 67. Josh Bell also to the Marlins. Okay, that's interesting. So presumably that makes the Guardians no Josh Naylor, no Josh Bell. Just yet another bump to the upside for Framber Valdez. It's a major spot for Framber Valdez without those two hitters in the lineup now. Who's playing first base? Did they have to call Manzardo up early and stick him at first base? All right, guys. I'm going to have to get out of here at some point. This has been a blast. It's been fun going up to the trade deadline. Not as exciting as I was hoping it to be. I was hoping it'd be like breaking news left and right, but we had some interesting ones to talk about. Loving Framber's safety. Yeah, I mean, Framber's so good. He could go bust, right? There's always that risk, but I mean, now we're down to like Jose Ramirez, and that's it in that lineup. There's not a lot of threat to him in that lineup today, so I really like the spot for him. It might not work out, but if we're talking about like safety, most likely to be the play, Framber's got major upside now. And I liked him a lot before those changes. Trey asks, when I run sims, would you run them sort by projection or by rating? I lean projection, but sometimes run both. I've never used the stochastic sims. I assume that's the sims that you're referring to, Trey. If it's something of your own sims, I would probably look for some sort of a blended, like I would create a rating based on projections and then whatever you're referring to as rating there. And I would create like a blended score. I would probably also work ownership into that. In mine, I use my projections. I use my home run marks. I use ownership to create a balanced score that grades out like the whole thing. So the way that you do that, you create the big pool of lineups. I use either 1,000 or 1,500 depending on the day. And then I have Excel rank them all. It goes down the list. It creates the total. It ranks the totals 1 through 1,500. And then I have it assign points, and I create a percentage. So I say like, all right, X percent of the projection, Y percent of the ownership, and Z percent of the home run score. Those numbers combine. So it's like, this is the 220th ranked lineup by projection and the top ranked lineup by lack of ownership, and it's also got great home runs. That'll combine to a really good score when I do the aggregate ranking, and that floats it up to the top of the lineups. To explain it in a really clunky way, that at some point, as I've been promising Larry and some other folks out there, I will make that video. It's just that I've made it already. It's on Stochastic, or it was. It's just difficult to have to go back and do again. But I do want to do that. I'm actually thinking about doing some kind of a pre-record, or maybe I'll do it live. Probably not live because I don't want to embarrass myself, like forgetting Excel formulas and shit that I have to look up. So I'll probably pre-record it and edit it and do like a little video of like, if you want to build football projections and a football sorting tool, maybe this is the way you do it. Or maybe it's just the sorting tool. Or maybe I just make you guys a goddamn sorting tool and put it into the chat one day or up on the website one day. I don't know. These are the things I'm trying to decide. But yeah, that's how I would use it, Trey. Not sure what their rating is based on. It's probably already some kind of combined factor then, if you're using labs. It's probably already something that takes like ownership, power, and pitcher matchup and projection into account. So you might be double counting a little bit, but using using projection and my home run number is a little bit double counting. But that helps me get to guys who are like a Joey Gallo type, who has typically like moderately bad projection, hits at the bottom of the lineup, so it might be difficult to get him to appear in combinations a lot. Using that home run mark for me helps drive a Joey Gallo into more lineups than he would naturally end up in, which can be good or it can be bad, but that's why I do it. So it might be double counting, but you're probably not hurt that much by double counting it. All right, with that in mind, 6:15, I gotta go. Good luck out there, gang. Somebody build a great lineup tonight and go win yourself some money. Everybody else finish second behind that person, third behind that person, and so on and so forth. Share the results with me. Make me feel good while I'm on my way home after a couple beers from the Yankee game. I'll catch everybody tomorrow. We'll be back in business tomorrow, and probably a smaller slate on a Wednesday, maybe. We'll see. See how it breaks down. But good luck out there tonight, gang. I'll see you later. Oh, hit the like and the subscribe. And I appreciate all you guys hanging out. Now I'll really hit the end button and see you later. Bye.